Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. Still having trouble sleeping? I honestly love this job, getting to sit here and share paranormal experiences from all over the world with you. Thanks so much for sending in your stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so let me tell you about a stretch of road outside a little town in northeastern Pennsylvania. The kind of place where the hills feel ancient, like they were here long before we had words for fear. People around there will point you toward this one winding cut through the woods. Locals call it Ridgeway Road now, but it's the same kind of old route you see all over Pennsylvania. Originally a wagon track, later paved, still narrow, still curving like it's trying to follow the land's memory instead of fighting it. And the legend? It starts in the late 1800s. The way folks tell it, a family was traveling home in a horse-drawn wagon one winter evening. Father, mother, and their little girl. The road had iced over, and there was this bend where the downhill drops off hard to one side. The wagon hit the slick patch, slid, and went off the edge. They say the father died right there. No last words, no chance. The mother survived, but barely. And the child was gone. Not passed away, not found later, just gone. Vanished into the trees like the woods swallowed her whole. Search parties combed the area for days. Neighbors, hunters, anyone with boots and a lantern. They called her name until their throats were raw. And still, nothing. No tracks, no torn clothing, no sign she'd ever been there at all. So, naturally, the story didn't stay a simple tragedy. It never does. Over time, the road picked up a reputation. Cursed, haunted, wrong, whatever word you want to use. And now, if you look it up online, you'll find videos, YouTube clips, TikTok posts, people claiming the place does things. They talk about headlights flickering for no reason, car radios cutting out mid-song, like someone reached in and pinched the sound off. Footsteps behind you when you're alone, especially if there's fog. That sensation, like cold fingertips brushing the back of your neck, quick and light, like a warning. And then there's the one detail everybody repeats, because it's just specific enough to feel real. They say if you stop your car on that road, roll the window down, and whisper, "I'll find you," you might hear a small voice answer from the dark, "Too late." Now listen, when a legend comes packaged with a line like that, something that perfect, something that cinematic, part of me immediately goes, okay, someone embellished this, because of course they did. But we didn't go out there to make fun of it. We went out there because even exaggerated stories usually start from something, a sound, a sighting, a moment that made someone's stomach drop. And Appalachia, especially up in those northern ridges, has a way of keeping stories alive. The mountains around there are some of the oldest on Earth. People live close to the dark and the quiet. You still hear folks say things like, "Lock your doors," and not in a casual way, in a sincere way, like they mean it. So here's what the road is actually like. It's about 5 miles, more or less. Traveling west to east, the first half climbs and wraps around a hill with sharp turns that come up quick. On one side, especially near the climb, you've got this steep drop that runs down toward the river valley. On the other side, the ground rises hard into rock and shale and trees. Everything feels tight, close, like the road was carved out with no room to spare. And what struck me right away during our daytime walkthrough was this. In that first half, the terrain is rough enough that you're not casually strolling through those woods. It's steep, rocky, and honestly uncomfortable. Not impossible, but not inviting. But the second half? Different story. As you come down the hill, the land starts to level out. The road opens up a little. You get glimpses of fields, a few driveways, Houses set back just far enough that at night they're more suggestion than comfort. That section felt more believable for the kind of stories people tell, because someone could park there. Someone could wander the tree line. Someone could hear something and not immediately blame it on the road itself. So we decided to treat it like a real investigation. Not a ghost hunt show, just careful, respectful, and thorough. First thing we did, research. My friends, Cal and Junie, reached out to the local historical society, and we asked a simple question. Is there any record of a fatal accident on this road in the late 1800s? A wagon crash? A missing child? Because if it happened, there's a decent chance it left a paper trail. Death notices, family records, something. And the historical society out there? Meticulous. The kind of people who can tell you who married who in 1823 and where they're buried without blinking. They found nothing. No tragic wagon crash. No missing child. No father killed on that road. No record at all. Which doesn't automatically mean it never happened. Records can be incomplete, names can get misremembered, but it did take a lot of wind out of the legend's sails. Next, we knocked on doors. And I want to be clear about this. That whole area is private property. We weren't about to creep around behind somebody's barn at midnight like idiots. So we introduced ourselves, explained what we were doing, and asked permission to be near the woods after dark. Every single person we spoke to was polite. Some folks looked at us like we were harmlessly strange, which, fair. A couple mentioned they'd heard odd noises while hunting or checking animals at night. Nothing dramatic. No glowing figures, no screaming. Just sounds that didn't sit right. And honestly, the funniest moment was this older guy, an absolute classic farmer type, telling us he'd once heard something that made him decide, nope, I'm done for the night. And his wife was standing there teasing him like, you just wanted an excuse to get out of the cold. It was oddly comforting. Like, whatever this place is, it isn't swallowing people whole. If anything, it's just giving folks a reason to laugh a little nervously. Then we did our overnight surveillance. We parked on the far eastern end of the road around 8 p.m. It was fully dark by then, winter dark, the kind that makes even familiar trees look unfamiliar. We had gear, GoPros, audio recorders, EMF readers, an infrared thermometer. We killed our phones, used handheld radios, checked in every 30 minutes. We split into 2 teams, 3 people on one side of the road, 2 on the other, moving slowly through the woods. And we had whistles as a backup in case radios failed. Simple signals. Check your radio. Look at messages. Come here now. It was quiet. Not spooky quiet, just winter quiet. And the results? Nothing. No voices, no crying, no footsteps pacing behind us, no sudden cold spot that hit only one person. EMF stayed in normal range the entire time. Temperatures dropped as the night deepened, but evenly, exactly what you'd expect when you're out all night in freezing weather. We stayed out until sunrise, and the only thing we really collected was fatigue and a deeper appreciation for warm socks. But here's the part I don't want to dismiss. Even when a place doesn't perform for you, it can still feel old in your bones. That area has deep history, generations of families, long before that the First Nations who lived along the river, and all those layers of human life stacked on the same ground. So do I think there's a ghost child out there answering too late into somebody's open car window? I don't know. What I do know is we didn't see anything. We didn't feel anything. And nobody we talked to seemed genuinely afraid. More like cautious, respectful, a little entertained by the mystery. Maybe the road only plays tricks on someone who's alone and already half spooked when the sun goes down. Maybe it's just a rural myth that grew teeth online. Or maybe the real haunting is simpler than that. A tragedy that never got solved in the way people needed. so the story kept going. Because sometimes, a community would rather have a ghost than have an ending that makes no sense at all. And honestly, on a dark winter road, with the woods leaning in close, I can understand why. Hey, so I'm still not totally sure what this was, but it's stuck with me in a way that's hard to explain. It started after one of those draining, never-ending school days. I came home completely wiped, backpack still on the floor, shoes half kicked off, and I just went straight to my room. I didn't even bother changing out of my uniform. I remember thinking, I just need 10 minutes, like a quick reset. So I flopped onto my bed, still on top of the blanket, lying on my back. At the time, my bed was wedged into the far left corner of the room, and I turned my head slightly toward the window. The weird part is, I think I fell asleep without ever fully closing my eyes. Or at least, it felt that way. Because suddenly, everything shifted. It was like the air in my room thickened, like someone hit pause on the entire world. No sound, no movement, just this heavy, frozen stillness. And my heart started pounding so hard, it felt like it was trying to climb out of my ribs. I remember, really clearly, repeating in my head, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." But I couldn't. It felt like something was pinning me down. Not like hands exactly, more like gravity had doubled and decided I wasn't allowed to move. And that's when it got unreal. I watched myself roll off the bed. Not like a dream where things are blurry or symbolic. I mean, I watched me, my body, slide off the mattress and stand up in front of the bed, facing the wall. And I was still there too, still trapped, still stuck in my own body, staring at the back of myself like I'd become an audience to my own life. I started panicking so fast it was like my mind went hot. I tried to shout. I tried to jerk my arms, to sit up, to do anything. But I couldn't even twitch. I was just locked in. And the standing version of me, let's call her Maya because it didn't feel like me anymore, started walking away. Slowly, calmly, like she had all the time in the world. In my head, I'm thinking, that's my spirit. That's literally my spirit leaving. And my chest felt heavier with every step she took, like dread was stacking on top of me. Then Maya stopped. She turned around, and she looked straight at me. And here's the part that makes my stomach tighten even now. She smiled. Not like a horror movie snarl or anything obviously evil. It wasn't violent. It was worse than that. It was unfamiliar. Like a smile that knew something I didn't. Like it belonged on someone else's face. And then she started coming back toward the bed. Each step closer she got, the more wrong she looked. Like her body was stretching, subtly at first, then more noticeably. Like her limbs were lengthening in a way that shouldn't be possible. The closer she got, the less she looked like a person, and the more she looked like a shape pretending to be one. She came right up beside the bed and just hovered there, leaning in slightly, staring. No words, no blinking that I can remember. Just watching me like I was something she'd been waiting to see. I was screaming inside my head. I was trying to yell for my mom, my dad, anyone. But my mouth wouldn't open. It felt sealed shut, like my voice had been unplugged from my body. And then Maya leaned over me, bent at the waist, close enough that it felt like she was breathing on me. I couldn't see breath, but I could feel that closeness, the weight of it, the invasion of it. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't. I pushed so hard mentally, like I was trying to rip myself out of a net. And in my head I was shouting, "Wake up!" over and over until it was all I could think. And then, like a cord snapping, my body let go. I didn't even stop to look around the room. I bolted out the door and into the hallway, hunting for my parents, desperate to be near another human being, desperate to hear a normal voice and prove the world was still real. And look, I know it's not a traditional ghost story. I don't even know what you'd call it. Sleep paralysis? Some kind of nightmare? Something else? All I know is, I still think about it sometimes. It happened years ago, but every once in a while, when I'm lying on my back and I feel that edge of sleep creeping in, I remember that smile, and I make sure I fully close my eyes. So, this is one of those things I used to brush off, you know? Like, growing up, I'd hear little sounds in the house. Soft footsteps in the hallway, a scratch against the wall, a knock that didn't quite match the way people knock. And I'd just tell myself it was the house settling, or pipes, or my imagination being dramatic. But here's the thing. My sister Mara and I have always been sensitive. I don't really have a better word for it. We pick up on moods that aren't ours. We feel someone's here, even when the room is empty. Like there are currents you can't see, and somehow we've always been tuned to them. And for most of my life, the feeling in that house was strangely comforting. Like being watched, but in a protective way. Like someone had my back. Until this one stretch of nights when it changed. The same watching feeling turned heavy, cold, like the air itself got thicker, like something kind had stepped aside and something else had taken its place. I should also say, my sleep has never been normal. I've had these vivid nightmares since I was little, the kind that don't feel like dreams at all. They aren't horror movie gory, it's not that. It's worse in a quieter way. They operate on rules that don't exist here. The atmosphere is always wrong. Like I'm in a world that looks almost familiar, but everything is tilted, and I can feel I'm not supposed to be there. And sometimes, in those dreams, I don't see people I recognize. But I'll catch it anyway. Familiar eyes in the wrong face. A presence borrowing somebody else's body just to get close to me. And if I ever become lucid, it doesn't feel like I'm taking control. Honestly, it feels like something notices. Like the moment I wake up inside the dream, something goes, "Oh, there you are." Mara's had sleep paralysis a few times. She told me she's seen figures during it, actual shapes. For me, it's never that clear. For me, it's the intrusion. The sense of something leaning in too close. And then there's the weirdest part, when I wake up. Sometimes I'll sit up and start talking, like I'm answering someone, but the words aren't mine. My voice sounds like me, sure, but what I'm saying comes out broken, scattered, like fragments of a conversation I wasn't supposed to be part of. My mom once told me my eyes looked empty when it happened, like I was home, but not fully back yet. Anyway, the incident, the thing that changed the vibe in the house completely. One night I woke up to the sound of a man sighing. Not like a normal sigh, this was thin, weak, almost like the last bit of breath leaving someone's lungs. It was so close it felt like it happened right beside my bed. I got up and checked the house. No one. Parents were out. The dog was asleep in the living room, far enough away that there's no way it was him. I remember standing there in the hallway thinking, okay, that was weird. And then just going back to bed like I hadn't just heard something exhale in my room. The next day, a relative, my great-uncle, passed away. And at first, I didn't connect it. I didn't want to. It felt like tempting fate to even think it. But a couple weeks later, something happened that I couldn't shrug off. I was in my room late, more like early morning, maybe around 2:30, headphones in, just trying to calm my brain down with music. And out of nowhere, the entire left side of my body went cold. Not chilly. Cold like someone opened a freezer door inside my skin. I mean, I felt it against me, like it was brushing my shoulder and neck, like it was leaking into the air around my face. That was the first time it ever got physical, and I swear to you, my whole body went into this animal kind of fear. The kind where you don't even have thoughts. Just get away, get away, get away. The next morning, we found out my grandmother had been rushed to the hospital. Serious condition. The timing hit me like a punch. That's when the fear really set in, because it stopped being spooky house noises and started feeling like warnings, or echoes, or something arriving before the news does. And then it got worse. The following night, I went to bed exhausted, like the kind of tired where you feel heavy all the way down to your bones. I fell asleep fast. And then I woke up because someone was pulling me by the shoulders. Not a dream pull, not that falling feeling. This was pressure. Hands. A tug like they were trying to drag me out of the bed. I rolled over, fully expecting to see someone there. And there was nothing. The room was empty, silent. And this is the part that makes me sound insane, but I was so worn out that I didn't even scream. I just whispered, angry, half asleep. Something like, "Leave me alone," except harsher. And then I laid back down and passed out again. But after that night, the room changed for good. The presence became constant, thick, ugly. I started noticing shadows in the corners that didn't behave like shadows. Noises got clearer. Footsteps that stopped when I held my breath. Faint taps that felt deliberate. And over time, it became obvious it wasn't just one thing. It felt like three. One felt like a tall, elderly man, stern but not immediately cruel. Another felt like an older woman, softer, almost sad. The kind where you feel like she's watching from a distance. And then there was the third. The third felt wrong in a way I can't fully explain. Not scary like a jump scare, more like bad intent. Like walking into a room right after an argument and the air still remembers. What really messed me up was finally talking to Mara about it. We weren't close growing up, more like ships passing in the same house, so we never compared notes. But recently, I told her everything. The sigh, the breathing, the pulling, the three presences. And she just stared at me, and her face drained, and she said, "You're going to hate this, but I know exactly what you mean." She described the same three figures, the same energy, the same nice one, the same old man, and the same one that felt purely evil. Like we'd both been living in parallel versions of the same haunting without realizing it. We even started wondering if it's tied to the area we live in, like the town itself has a history that bleeds into certain houses. But honestly, that's its own rabbit hole. All I know is, when I go back to my parents' place now, and I walk into my old room, it doesn't just feel spiritually off. Sometimes I feel physically sick. A sudden nausea. A heaviness like someone put a weight on my chest. A chill that doesn't sit on the surface of your skin. It sinks into your bones and stays there. And there are nights where I'll be lying in the dark, and I can't even open my eyes, because I can feel someone staring at me so intensely, it feels like pressure on my face. And the scariest part? I don't want to look. Not because I think I'll see nothing, but because deep down, I'm afraid I won't. So, before I get into this, I should probably say, I'm not someone who goes looking for ghosts. I grew up with religion around me, sure, but these days I wouldn't call myself particularly devoted. I'm not out here claiming I know what's out there. I've even gone down the rabbit hole a few times, researching similar stories and figures people swear they've seen. And every single time, I end up with nothing solid. No explanation that really sticks. Anyway, here's the setting. I live in a small, quiet town on the west coast of Ireland. It's the kind of place where not much changes day to day, and you don't exactly get a parade of flashy cars or wealthy strangers drifting through. Most mornings, I go for a walk alone just to clear my head. There's this little route I like, up toward a roadside statue of Mary, perched on a low rise, and then I loop back home. The road out there is usually dead silent, especially early. This happened about 6 or 7 weeks ago. It was one of those mornings where the light is just starting to spill over everything. Dim, soft, almost sleepy. I was coming up toward the statue when I noticed someone ahead of me. Or part of someone. At first, I thought it was just a woman walking the same way I was, but I couldn't see her face. I was still a fair bit behind her, and there's a short stone wall near the statue where ivy and leaves sort of spill over the edge. Between the distance and that bit of cover, all I really had was the view of her from the lower back down. But what I could see was oddly specific. She was dressed completely in white, like not casual white, more like polished, expensive white. She had white heels that looked immaculate, the kind you'd never wear on a quiet country road unless you were very confident or very determined. Her skirt fell to around her knees, and she had a fitted jacket over it, the whole thing looking like something you'd wear to a formal event. Over her shoulder was a small handbag, gold-toned, almost gleaming even in the weak morning light. And her legs. That's the part that still sits weird with me. They looked smooth, but the color was off, pale with a faint gray cast, like someone wearing foundation that didn't quite match, or like the light was doing something strange. It didn't look like decay or anything dramatic, just unnatural in a quiet way. If I had to guess her age from what I saw, I'd say she seemed young, maybe mid-20s, give or take. Now, here's where it turns. I sped up a little, not in a panicked way, more in that curious, oh, maybe I know her way. I just wanted to get close enough to see her properly, to catch her face, to confirm she was real, basically. And as I walked faster, she vanished. Not like she turned a corner and I lost her. Not like she ducked behind the wall. I mean, she was there, and then she simply wasn't. It was so sudden it actually made me stop walking, like my brain needed a second to catch up. What really unsettled me was the sound. When I first saw her, I could hear the click of her heels on the concrete. Sharp, steady, completely ordinary. And the instant she disappeared, the sound cut out too. Like someone had muted the world for a second. No fading footsteps, no quickening pace, nothing. Just gone. And of course, in the moment, I didn't think to pull out my phone. It all happened too fast, and honestly, it felt ridiculous. Like, what am I going to do? Start recording the back of a stranger near a statue at dawn? So I have no video, no photo, just my memory and the way my stomach dropped when the road ahead of me was suddenly empty. But every time I come up that little rise, a part of me expects to hear that crisp clicking again. And I hate how much I want a normal explanation, even though I can't quite find one that makes the whole thing fit. So when I was a kid, around 4th grade, my mom signed me up for this after-school biofeedback thing with the school psychologist. It happened once or twice a week, usually late enough that most of the building felt like it had already gone to sleep. They'd sit me down in this little office, stick these sensor pads on my forehead and scalp, and have me play these super simple computer games. Looking back, I think it was tied to attention stuff, like they were trying to help me focus or see how my brain reacted. But at the time, it just felt like, okay, guess I'm playing weird school games with wires on my head again. It was almost always just me and the psychologist left in the whole place. Mr. Klein, that was his name, I think. Calm voice, kind of soft-spoken. And once my session was done, I'd wait for my mom to come pick me up. The gym was right near the front entrance, and while I waited, I'd sometimes wander over there. Not to do anything dramatic, mostly just to kill time, enjoy the open space, hear my footsteps echo. The rest of the school would be dark and still, except for a few places that stayed lit. The front foyer, the counselor's office, and the gym area. And then one afternoon, I walked into the gym like I always did, and I heard a little girl's voice, sharp and clear, like she was right there in the room. "Somebody help me!" It wasn't muffled. It wasn't distant. It sounded close, like she was maybe just around the corner of the bleachers or behind the equipment doors. My first thought wasn't ghosts. My first thought was, oh my God, someone's here. Someone needs help. I figured maybe a classmate was stuck somewhere, or someone got hurt, or somebody's parent brought them in and they got separated. So I yelled back, loud, trying to sound brave. "Where are you?" Nothing. I waited a second, and the silence felt thick, like the air itself was listening. I called again. "Hello? I can help you. Where are you?" Still nothing. Not a whimper, not a shuffle, not a single sound to follow it. That's when I stepped back out of the gym and looked down the hallway and into the front area. The entire school was quiet, empty. The lights that were usually on were on, like always, but everything else was blacked out. Dark classrooms and long corridors with no movement at all. And I remember standing there thinking, how could someone be here and I can't hear anything else? I went back into the gym and just listened, waiting for another cry, waiting for any sign of where it came from. But it never happened again. Not that day. Not any day after that. And honestly, what haunts me isn't just the voice. It's the way it felt so real that I reacted without thinking. If I'd felt scared first, I don't think I would have called out at all. But I didn't. I just wanted to help. Afterward, I asked around in my own kid way. Later on, as I got older, I tried again. Looked for any story, any accident, anything that could explain it. Nothing. No rumor about a child. No "this happened in the gym" story. No memorial, no headlines, no whispers. Just nothing. There were these 2 locker rooms attached to the gym that everyone thought were creepy. They weren't used anymore. Doors shut, lights off, like they'd been abandoned on purpose. And I remember staring at them that day, thinking, could it have come from in there? Because really, that was the only place it could have been coming from. I think about it even now, how clear it was, how fast it disappeared. And what bothers me most is that I can't file it away as a misunderstanding. I've tried. I've replayed it 100 times. If that school were still standing, I swear I'd go back as an adult and just sit in that gym for a while. See if it ever happened again. See if there was some echo or vent or trick of sound I missed. But the building's gone now. They tore it down years ago. More than a decade, I think. And in a weird way, that makes it worse, because it means there's no place to return to. No way to test it. No way to stand in the exact spot and try to understand what I heard. Just that one moment. A little girl's voice in an empty gym. "Somebody help me!" And then, nothing at all. So, I've got this one trip story that still gives me chills when I think about it. A couple years back, our school took a trip with students from grades 7, 8, and 9 to this resort near Chittagong in Nepal. kind of tucked away with forest all around. We reached around dusk, and by the time we dropped our bags, the sky had already gone that deep, heavy dark where everything looks like a shadow of itself. At first, it was fun. Everyone was hyped, laughing, acting brave. Someone was like, "Let's go up toward the jungle and explore." I went once with my junior, Rohan, just the two of us, and honestly, nothing happened. It was creepy, yeah, but normal creepy. But then later, we went again. This time a whole group, maybe 6 or 7 of us. Now we were all acting tough, mocking ghosts like idiots, doing that thing boys do when they're scared but don't want to admit it. One guy, Sujal, was recording on his phone, showing off how clear the video was, zooming in on trees and leaves like he was making some documentary. Everything stayed normal, until Aman, and I swear this is the exact moment the vibe shifted. He went and started peeing on a tree. And in our culture, you know how people say doing stuff like that in certain places can invite bad energy? Like it's disrespectful and it attracts spirits. We even joked about it while he was doing it, like, "Bro, you're calling the boot now." But then Sujal suddenly goes, "Wait, what the heck?" He shows us the recording, and the footage is wrong. Like the whole video turns blurry and pixelated right when Aman starts peeing. Not normal blur, not shaking blur, more like the phone couldn't focus on reality anymore. And the weirdest part is, Sujal's camera is usually super sharp. It wasn't even raining or foggy, just clean air, dark forest, and suddenly the video looks corrupted. Someone tried to laugh it off and said maybe there's a signal jammer nearby, but we all just stared at each other like, a jammer? In the middle of a jungle? For what? We got back to the resort acting loud, trying to convince ourselves it was nothing. But once we settled in, the fear started creeping in, quietly. Later that night, a bunch of us decided to go back to that same spot, like a stupid fix-it mission. Someone suggested we should apologize, like properly, out loud. Another guy was like, spit on the ground and say sorry, because people say that kind of thing can undo disrespect. So we did, awkwardly, nervously, trying not to laugh. And that's when it got worse. Back in the rooms, we started hearing banging, like door banging, then glass-like clinks, then knocking, hard knocks, not soft ones. We'd jump up and run to check, and there'd be nobody. And it wasn't like someone could prank us easily either. The layout was such that if it was someone from the next room, they would have had to sprint and hide in seconds. We checked corridors, checked outside. Nothing. Then Aman, the same guy, started acting off. At first it was small, random laughing, like laughing at nothing. Then his face changed, like his mood kept flipping. He got aggressive, started talking weird, and then, this part still makes my stomach twist. He started taking his clothes off, like he didn't care who was there. We tried to calm him down, like, "Bro, stop it, what are you doing?" He looks right at me and goes, dead serious, "Who's standing behind you?" I turned around so fast my neck hurt. There was nobody, just the dark corner of the room and a wall. We got scared now. Not, haha, ghost scared, like real fear, where your hands feel cold. One of the boys ran and brought ash, just whatever we could find, and we put a mark on his forehead, like a protective thing. Someone started playing bhajans loudly from a speaker, like full volume, as if sound could push the darkness back. We kept telling Aman, "Focus on us, look at us, stay with us." But even with the prayers playing, the banging sounds got louder, like something outside was angry. At one point, 9 of us went together into the hallway, and 3 boys said they'd guard near the end of the corridor to see if anyone was messing around. I stayed closer to the group because, I'll be honest, I was terrified, like my legs felt weak. A few minutes later, those 3 came back looking pale and dead serious, No jokes, no smiles. One of them just said, really quietly, "We saw a huge black shadow." Not like a person, not like a prank, like a shape that didn't look normal. And then another weird thing happened. My friend Kieran suddenly said his leg felt heavy, like someone was pressing it down. He kept lifting it and shaking it like it was asleep, but he swore it didn't feel numb. It felt pulled. Later, one of the guys searched online about the place, like local ghost stories, old rumors, anything. He found stuff about workers dying in accidents around old construction in that area, and stories about certain stone sites nearby being connected to spirits. And the creepiest part wasn't even the stories. It was how perfectly it matched what was happening. Heavy legs, shadows, random banging, that oppressive feeling like you're being watched. Then, when we thought things were calming down, a massive bang hit near the window, like someone slammed something against the wall. We checked the time, 12:31 a.m., and I remember thinking, who even has the courage to prank people at this hour? Like it didn't feel human anymore. It felt stupid to even call it a prank. We finally told the teacher, and we also asked some girls if they'd heard anything. And the worst part? They said yes. They'd heard knocking too. One of them said she saw something dark and hairy-like near the doorway, like a shadow trying to lure attention. When multiple people say the same thing, separately, that's when your brain stops arguing. After that, nobody wanted to be alone, not even for a second. We ended up squeezing together like little kids, 8 of us somehow crammed into one bed, laughing nervously just to survive the moment. Like we were trying to turn fear into a joke, because if we didn't laugh, we'd probably cry. And yeah, we eventually slept, but it wasn't real sleep. It was that exhausted, scared sleep where you wake up at every tiny sound, holding your breath, hoping morning comes faster. Even now, when I think of that pixelated video and those bangs in the hallway, I just get this cold feeling like maybe we weren't alone that night. So here's something my family has been telling me for as long as I can remember. Like one of those stories that gets passed down at birthdays over cups of tea whenever someone says, "You'll never believe this." Before I was even born, my great-grandmother, her name was Mabel, apparently told my parents, plain as day, that I'd come into the world with blue eyes and brown hair. The thing is, she passed away before I ever took my first breath. And still, somehow, she was right. To this day, I'm the only one in the family with that exact mix. Everyone else has their own variations, but me? Blue eyes, brown hair, just like she said. My parents still talk about how stunned they were, like, how could she possibly have known? And then there's the other part. The part that still makes my skin go cold if I think about it too long. When I was a baby, about 1 or 2, my mom told me there was a night she and my dad shot upright in bed because they heard me making this awful sound, like I couldn't breathe. She described it as if I was being choked, like someone had their hands around my throat. Obviously, I don't remember any of it, but the way she tells it, she still sounds shaken even now. That first place we lived in was a small upstairs apartment, and as I grew up there with my brothers, there were 4 of us kids total, 3 boys and me, the youngest girl. We started noticing things before anyone ever sat us down and said, "Okay, this is what we think is happening." At night, we'd hear cutlery clinking in the kitchen, like someone calmly rummaging through drawers. We'd hear slow footsteps when everyone was meant to be asleep. And in the mornings, my parents, who were always the first ones awake, would walk out and find cupboard doors hanging open that absolutely weren't open the night before. Even the neighbors said things. They'd stop my parents in the hallway and be like, "Were you renovating up there?" because they'd hear loud banging through the ceiling, heavy enough to rattle their place, at times when none of us were even home. And my parents would just stand there like, "That's impossible. We weren't there." One incident still sticks with me because it wasn't just my family hearing things anymore. There was a night my family was away for a funeral, my dad's uncle, I think, and I was too little to go. So I stayed downstairs with my best friend at the time, Lily, and her mum, Renee. We had dinner, watched a bit of TV, did the whole bedtime routine. Totally normal. Then all three of us heard it. These huge crashes coming from our apartment upstairs. Not a little creak or a settling noise, like full-on angry stomping movement. It went on long enough that Renee's face changed, that serious adult look, and she grabbed her keys and said, "Right, I'm checking." She went up, looked around. Every room. Silence. No one there. Nothing out of place that explained it. And when she came back down, she didn't laugh it off or brush it away. She looked genuinely unsettled. The next morning she told my parents everything, and that was the first time my parents had someone outside our family confirm it in a way that couldn't be waved off as imagination. Somewhere along the way, years later when I was old enough to understand, they told me something else they'd been told back then. That there was supposedly a female presence attached to me. Like she was following me. Like I was the reason things were happening. I didn't know what to do with that as a kid, you know? How do you even process something like that without it turning into fear? And then it started again. Not constantly, but enough. Random sounds that didn't belong anywhere. Doors shifting when no one was near them. And the stairs. Oh my God, the stairs. Even now, years later, the stairs are the worst part. It'll be completely silent in the house, and then you'll hear what sounds like heavy boots, like thick, hard soles, stomping up or down. Not soft footsteps, not a creak. Heavy, deliberate steps. My mom has heard it. My brother has heard it. I've heard it. We've looked at each other in that exact moment like, "Please tell me you heard that too." One time, when I was a teenager, it was just me, one of my brothers, and my dad in the living room. We were all right there, and suddenly, from the kitchen, we heard the oven door slam shut, hard. My brother went pale, like instant goosebumps. He actually whispered for my mom to check it when she got home, because he didn't even want to go near the kitchen alone. By the time I was 20, I was tired of wondering if I was imagining things. So I went to see a medium. Part of me was skeptical, honestly, but part of me just wanted answers. I didn't tell her much. I tried to keep it simple. And she said it anyway. She told me there was a female spirit connected to me. The same thing my family had been told years earlier, without me feeding her that information first. That was the moment it stopped feeling like coincidence to me. Not because I wanted it to be true, because I didn't, but because it matched too closely. Then later, when my now fiancé, Evan, moved in with me, he had no idea about any of this. None. I didn't want to freak him out, and I didn't want to plant ideas in his head. But after a while, he started noticing things. Little things at first, then bigger things. And one day he looked at me and said, "Does stuff like this happen a lot?" And weirdly, that helped. Not because I wanted someone else dragged into it, but because it was the first time I got that outside confirmation from someone who hadn't grown up hearing the stories. I'm 26 now, and it still happens. Not every day, not like some horror movie where everything is flying off shelves, but enough that it's always sitting in the back of my mind. I still wear a cross necklace, more out of habit than anything, but also because it makes me feel steadier. And there's this video my mom sent me once that I still hate watching. Our cat, staring at nothing, tracking something across the room, then jumping and swiping like it's trying to grab whatever's there. But there's nothing. No toy, no bug, no shadow. Just empty air. It freaks me out every single time. Lately, we've started talking about doing something about it, like properly. Cleansing the house, using sage, whatever you want to call it. Not out of anger, not out of drama, more like, it feels like whatever this is has been hanging around for too long. And if there really is something unsettled here, I don't want it lingering forever. I want peace. For me, for my family, for Evan, and honestly, for whatever might be stuck. And look, I know how this sounds. I really do. If you haven't lived it, it's easy to dismiss. I used to be the same way when I was younger, oblivious, brushing things off, thinking people were just being dramatic. But it's harder to shrug off when it keeps happening, year after year, in different homes, with different people hearing the same things. I'm not telling this to convince anyone. I'm telling it because it's my reality. And maybe, somewhere out there, someone's lived something similar and knows exactly what I mean. So, this happened a long time ago, something like a decade and a half back, and I still don't know what to make of it. To set the scene, we were living in this house that always felt off. Like not in a dramatic way where you're screaming every night, more like this constant heavy vibe. Even later, just driving past the place gave me that same weird, uneasy feeling in my stomach. Anyway, my oldest, Luca, used to talk about seeing a scary man outside the window. Sometimes he'd mention a little kid, too. I brushed it off at the time. The house wasn't far from a busy strip with shops and streetlights, and I figured it was just shadows moving through the trees. Reflections, that kind of thing. Kids imagine stuff, you know how it is. But then one night, I'm in bed, and I get that horrible sensation like I'm being pressed down into the mattress, like something heavy is pinning me. It wasn't the first time I'd felt it either, so I tried to talk myself down. Thought maybe it was that thing people get when they wake up suddenly and their body hasn't caught up yet. After a minute, I finally managed to move. I sit up, shake it off, and I head out to the living room to clear my head. Not long after that, Luca wakes up absolutely losing it, screaming, crying, terrified. I rush into his room, and that's when I notice this helium balloon hovering near the window. One of those leftover party balloons, the kind that should be slowly sinking, not just hanging there like it's thinking. I pick Luca up and bring him out to the living room with me, trying to calm him down. A few minutes later, same thing happens with my youngest, Milo. Screaming, sobbing, full panic. I go into his room, and now the balloon is hovering over his bed. And I'm still trying to be logical. I'm telling myself, okay, you walked in here earlier. Maybe you stirred the air. Maybe it drifted. Except, it didn't drift like a balloon drifts. It was positioned too neatly, too deliberately, like it chose where to be. So now I've got both kids in the living room, curled up on the couch together. I'm standing there in that quiet, alert way you get when you're pretending everything's fine, but every nerve in your body is tuned to the house. And then, the balloon comes down the hallway. Not bobs in the air kind of movement. It came down the hallway like someone was walking it toward us. Like an invisible hand was holding the string just out of sight, guiding it smoothly around the corner and into the room. At this point, my partner, Jade, was awake too. She was sitting up, watching, completely silent. The room felt frozen. Even the kids had gone quiet, like they sensed something was happening that they didn't have words for. The balloon floated closer to me, slow and steady, and it honestly looked like it was being presented, like it was coming to meet me. When it got close enough, I reached out and pushed it away. kind of a cautious shove, like, "Nope, back up." It drifted back toward the hallway, paused, and then started coming right back again. So I did it again, pushed it away, and again it returned. Not immediately, not chaotically, just steadily, like it wanted to come back to me. And I remember saying, out loud, like I was talking to a nervous animal, "Hey, bring it back. I won't hurt you." And it did. And I swear, I still wish cameras were as common then as they are now, because if I had footage of it, I'd never stop showing people. Eventually, though, the fear started creeping in. That slow realization of, okay, I don't understand what this is, and I don't like that I don't understand it. So on one of the passes, I hit the balloon harder, like a proper smack. Not playful anymore, more like, stop, enough. The second I did that, everything changed. The string went slack, like whatever had been holding it just let go. The balloon dropped low and sort of sagged, and it never moved again after that. No coming back, no hovering, no hallway drift. Just a balloon doing what balloons do when they're done. And I stood there staring at it, with my kids huddled together on the couch, and Jade watching me like she was trying to confirm she hadn't imagined it either. To this day, I don't know what it was. Was it something paranormal? Was it something I interacted with somehow? People have told me it was just wind or airflow in the house, but I can't make that fit. Not with the way it hovered in 2 separate rooms, then traveled down the hallway and into the living room like it had a destination. All I know is, that night stuck to me. It's one of those memories that never fades, because it didn't feel like a dream, and it didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like someone was there, just for a moment, and I happened to be awake enough to see it. So, let me tell you about my granddad. Well, I'm going to call him Frank here. Frank was, honestly, a classically difficult man. Sharp edges, quick temper, a mouth like sandpaper, and somehow still one of the most loving people I've ever known. He'd had a brutal childhood, and he carried it like armor. The kind of man who built his life with his bare hands and made sure everyone knew it. He grew up in a family that was considered a problem from the start. His mom was Catholic, his dad Protestant, and back then that mix came with a lot of shame and cruelty, especially from the church. Frank hated the church for it. Not in a casual, eye-rolling way, no. This was deep, personal, scorched earth hatred. He told stories about being skint, proper poor, and still the church would show up like clockwork and take money from the little tin they kept by the fireplace. Didn't matter if the kids were living on bread and jam for days. That memory lived in him like a splinter he never let anyone pull out. And I'm telling you this because you need the full picture. Frank wasn't just non-religious. He was anti-religion, anti-spirituality, anti-anything that smelled like faith or fate. He mocked horoscopes, laughed at anyone who found God, and took genuine pleasure in shutting the door on religious callers mid-sentence. Now, jump to late 2016. I'm 20, home for a bit, staying the night at my grandparents' place. Frank is in his mid-80s and still frighteningly sturdy. He'd been a manual worker his whole life, and even after retiring, he moved like someone who didn't know how to be old. Deaf as anything from years on sites before anyone cared about ear protection, and he lived off stuff that should have killed a lesser man. Potato scones, strong tea, and spicy food that gave him heartburn he complained about dramatically while still eating it. I was his only granddaughter, and my whole life people had said, "You're just like him." Same stubborn streak, same way of standing your ground. I adored him. He was ill-tempered and hilarious and kind in this blunt, practical way. He wasn't soft with words, but you always knew where you stood with him. And I knew, without him ever needing to say it, that he loved me. We were outside that afternoon because that's where he was happiest. The garden was his kingdom. He could make anything grow. I'd inherited a bit of that, so we were out there together, hands in the soil, pulling weeds along the edge of the little pond. And out of nowhere, like he was commenting on the weather, he says, "I saw Hugh last night." I remember freezing a bit, still crouched by the flower bed, dirt under my nails. "Hugh who?" I asked. "Uncle Hugh?" He barely looked up, just kept staring at the ground like he could see something in it. "No, my brother Hugh." And his brother had been dead for years, so I did the obvious thing. I tried to make it normal. "You mean you dreamt about him?" Frank shook his head slowly, and the way his face changed, God, I can still see it. It wasn't dramatic. It was unsettled, like something had shifted under his feet. "No," he said. "I was awake. He was there, standing at the foot of the bed, clear as day." Then he swallowed, like he didn't like hearing himself say it. He told me it was time to go. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't even know what to say, because this was Frank, the man who scoffed at ghosts and fate and anything mysterious, the man who would have torn someone apart for telling a story like this at the dinner table. He just stared at the garden a moment longer and then said, quieter, "I don't know, lass. I just know I saw him." After that, life moved the way it always does. I went back to university, got busy, told myself I'd visit more. I didn't, and the guilt of that still pinches. Then, in spring 2017, Frank fell during the night and cut his arm. It seemed like one of those rough, old man injuries you assume will heal because they've always been tough as nails. But it didn't go that way. He ended up with a bad infection, sepsis, they said, and he died in hospital. No long warning, no gentle decline, just sudden. Even for a man nearly 90, it felt like someone had yanked a rug out from under all of us. And I miss him all the time. Not in a poetic way, in a constant, irritating, everyday way. Like reaching for a tool that isn't there anymore. I still wonder if he'd be proud of me. I hope he would. The older I get, the more I feel him in me. Driven, stubborn, sharp-tongued, but also fiercely protective of people. The kind of person who cares about workers, unions, politics, who gets angry when the world is unfair and can't let it slide. Now, this part. The morning after he died, the whole family was gathering at my grandparents' house. You know that feeling. Everyone moving around quietly, making tea they don't drink, speaking in half sentences because the grief is too big for proper words. I was driving up the familiar lane, the one I'd taken 1,000 times. And I swear to you, hand on heart, I saw him. Frank, walking along the side of the road like he always did. Same shape, same stride, like he'd just stepped out for air. I slowed without thinking. My stomach flipped so hard I felt sick. And he turned. He looked right at my car, lifted his hand, and gave me that little salute he always did. Just a quick, casual two-finger thing. Like, "All right, I see you." Then he was gone. It's still the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm a logical person. I know grief can make your brain do wild, desperate things. I know how memory and longing can blur into something that feels real. But here's the part that gets me. I've lost people since then. I've grieved. I've been broken-hearted in other ways. And nothing, not once, has ever felt like that again. Hey, so before I jump in, you need a little context. I grew up in this tiny river town in southern Illinois. I mean tiny. A couple hundred people on a good day. We'll call it Raven's Bluff. It sits right along the Ohio River, and there's this state park there with a cave cut into the limestone cliffs. The cave is basically the town's claim to fame, except the stories tied to it are... Old river folklore says pirates used to hide out near that cave. Some of them would dress up to lure boats closer, then rob the passengers. And the area has all these gritty frontier legends tied to it too, like early serial killer stories that people still about like they happened yesterday. So yeah, it's one of those places where the history feels like it never really stopped breathing. And in my family, paranormal stories were just part of the background noise. Everybody had something. But the one that always pulls me back is my aunt and uncle's old house. My Aunt Marla and Uncle Dean lived up on this hill, not far from the ferry landing, close enough that you always felt the river nearby, even when you couldn't see it. My grandparents lived next door, so when I was little, like ages 1 through maybe 8, I stayed there all the time. It was basically a second home, and almost every person in my family who spent real time in that house has a story they can tell without even thinking, because it's burned into them. Like this. Marla and Dean would be in the living room watching TV, and they'd hear the pull chain on the ceiling fan in their bedroom, that little click-click sound, and then the light would turn on. Not flicker, not dim, fully on, as if someone reached up and pulled it, and the fan was centered right over their bed. You couldn't reach that chain unless you were literally standing in the middle of the mattress. Another time, they were actually in bed, about to fall asleep, and it happened again. Same chain, same unmistakable sound. Then there were the days they'd come home from groceries and find stuff open. Doors, windows, cabinet doors. Not like one cabinet got left cracked. I mean a weird, scattered, someone walked through the place and opened things just to open them. And that's all their side of it. Mine started a little later, late 90s, early 2000s. I remember being there with Uncle Dean one afternoon, and he had this massive stereo setup. Tower speakers, big receiver, the kind of system that felt like it could shake the drywall if you wanted it to. We were trying to find the remote because it had gone missing. So we're looking around, checking between couch cushions, under magazines, normal stuff. And then, out of nowhere, the recliner in the corner fully reclines. Not slowly, like it slipped. It went back like someone leaned into it with their weight. And before I can even process that, the stereo turns on by itself and blasts up, like full volume. The kind of sound that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. Dean snapped to his feet instantly, like his body reacted before his mind could. He shut it off and just stood there for a second, breathing hard, staring at the recliner like it might move again. Neither of us said much after that. Not because we didn't have words, but because words felt useless. Another time, I was staying over with my cousins. I'll change their names too. Let's call my cousin Lena. We were kids, so we shared a bed like it was no big deal. We woke up in the middle of the night to their dog, an old spotted mutt, not even a guard dog type, just losing his mind. Snarling, barking, frantic. He was standing rigid, facing this rocking chair in the corner of Lena's room. And the chair was rocking. I remember my whole body going cold. I looked at Lena, expecting her to panic, and she just leaned toward me and whispered something like, "It's okay. Don't worry about it. Go back to sleep." Like she'd done that exact moment before. And I didn't sleep much after that, but I also didn't argue, because somehow the scariest part was how normal it seemed to her. But the one that sticks with me the most, like the one I still feel in my chest when I think about it, happened in the living room. I was there with my mom, Tara, visiting Marla and Dean. They called my mom into another room to show her something, some photo album thing, I think, and they left me sitting in the living room alone. At first it was fine. Then I got this sudden crawling feeling, like when you realize you're being watched, except heavier. Wrong. Like the air changed. I stood up and took a couple steps, maybe 2, maybe 3, and then it felt like something wrapped around me. That's the only way I can describe it. Not hands, not arms. More like pressure. Like I'd been caught in something invisible that tightened all at once. Everything went quiet. Like someone hit mute on the world. I tried to call out, and nothing came. I tried to move, couldn't. Tried to scream, nothing. My mouth was open, and my lungs were working, but no sound happened. My body just refused. I have no idea how long it lasted. Seconds? A minute? Longer? Time didn't behave normally in that moment. And then my mom came back in the room. I remember her voice cutting through the silence like a rope being thrown to someone drowning. She asked me if I was okay. And the second she stepped into the room, it was like whatever had me just released. I couldn't explain anything. I didn't even try. I just started crying, full-on shaking sobs like my body needed to get the fear out somehow. I'm in my 30s now, and I still don't have a clean answer for what that was. Marla and Dean moved out when I was around 7 or 8, so it's been over 2 decades since they lived there. And for a long time, it stayed filed away as this haunted chapter of childhood that I didn't know what to do with. But recently, I had to go back home for a funeral. And this is the part that messed with me in a totally different way. My grandmother on my dad's side, let's call her Ruth, is the most religious, no-nonsense, straight-shooting woman you can imagine. The type who doesn't entertain spooky stories. Ever. We're sitting there eating after the service, and Ruth comes over, sits right beside us, me, Marla, and Dean, and she says, real casual, like she's asking about the weather. Back when you lived in that hill house, did anything ever happen that you couldn't explain? I swear the whole table energy shifted, because she has never asked anything like that. Not once in my entire life. So we tell her, just the basics, some of the things I told you. And as we're talking, I watch her face change. Like something clicked into place for her that she didn't want to admit existed. And then she tells us why she asked. Apparently the person living in that house now, the current owner, has been dealing with things too. Enough that he finally went to Ruth, through the church, basically asking if she knew anything about the house, or if she could help. That's when it hit me in this really unsettling way. It wasn't just our family. It wasn't just kids imagining stuff. Whatever was happening there, it outlived the people. So now I'm stuck with this split feeling. Part of me wants to go back, talk to the owner, stand in the rooms again, see if it still feels the same. Maybe prove something to myself, one way or the other. And that's honestly where I'm at, still holding the questions, still wondering what that house was, what that feeling was, and why it picked certain moments to show itself. And I'll end with the same thing I find myself asking any time I talk about it. If you've ever lived near a place with a history that feels heavy, have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? And if you were me, would you go back? Or would you leave it alone? Alright, so before I tell you what happened, I should give you a little background, because without it, the whole thing sounds even stranger. My mom was adopted as a baby. Her biological mom had a lot of kids and couldn't take care of them, so my mom ended up being raised by the woman I've always known as my grandma. And growing up, my mom kept her biological side at a distance, very deliberately. She didn't want anything to do with them, and she didn't want me connected to them either. Even now, I only know the vague outlines of who those relatives are and how they're linked to her. Also, my mom has always been a bit of a prankster. She'll call me with something ridiculous like, "Guess what? Your cousin bought a goat," just to see if I'll believe it. She'll laugh, all grown, and within an hour, she's admitting she made it up. My dad, though? Total opposite. He's not a prank guy. He's calm, serious, and if he's ever in on a joke, you can usually tell because he can't keep a straight face. That matters, because what I'm about to tell you is the one story my mom never backed down from. Not once. Years later, she still swears it happened exactly the way she says. And what's even weirder is my dad used to support everything she said about it. Until one day, he got really quiet and told us he didn't want to talk about it anymore because it made him uncomfortable. Which is so unlike him that it still stands out to me. Even my grandma, the one who raised my mom, confirmed what my mom told her right after it happened. And my grandma is the kind of person who rolls her eyes at nonsense. If anything, she thinks my mom can be immature, but she doesn't think she's a liar. One more detail that matters. The layout of the house I grew up in. My bedroom was on the ground floor, and my parents' room was directly above mine. From my door to the kitchen and living room, it was about a short hallway, maybe 8 or 9 meters. So if I was talking, it wasn't hard for them to hear. So, here's what happened. When I was about 4, almost 5, my mom was pregnant with my little brother. And for a stretch of time, every night at bedtime, I started talking to someone in my room. At first, my parents thought it was nothing. Little kid stuff, imaginary friend stuff. But it didn't stop. It went on for weeks. Not just a few minutes either. Sometimes I'd be chatting for a full hour like there was somebody sitting there with me, and I was genuinely engaged. Not giggling and being silly, more like having an actual conversation. After a couple weeks, my parents finally asked me who I was talking to. I remember them saying something like, "Who are you talking to, honey?" Expecting me to say a made-up name like Mr. Sparkles or something. But I didn't. I told them, very matter-of-factly, that he wasn't my friend. That apparently made the whole thing feel different. So they asked me to describe him, and I did. I said he was an older man, tall, with thinning hair like my dad, and that he usually wore a light-colored baseball cap. I didn't call him a scary man. I didn't say he was mean. But I also didn't talk about him the way you'd talk about a fun, imaginary buddy. It was more like he was just there, and I was talking because that's what you do when someone's there. My parents started getting worried because it was affecting my sleep. So they'd tell me, "Okay, time to stop talking now. You need to rest." And for a while, I'd still do it, maybe half an hour every other night, until it gradually faded. Then one day, it just stopped completely, except there was this other part. Around the same time, I started using strange words for normal objects, like I'd call pens and pencils inks. Not ink, inks. Like it was the object itself. My parents noticed because, it's one thing if a kid mispronounces something, but I was using these confident, specific labels like I'd been taught. They asked me why I was calling things by the wrong names, and I told them, casually, like it should have been obvious. That's what the man calls them. That rattled them, because now it wasn't just bedtime chatter, it was leaking into real life. Not long after that, we moved away for a while. Different place, different house. My brother was born soon after, and everything got busy, and gradually the whole man in the hat thing just became one of those odd childhood phases people file away and stop thinking about. For a year or two, it never came up again. Then, later, right before we moved back to our original house, we stopped by to visit some biological relatives on my mom's side. She had been trying to track down someone, an old family connection, I think, and these were relatives she considered the less messy part of that world, so she felt okay bringing us. We were there for a while, adults talking, kids roaming around, normal visit. And then I wandered over to the fireplace. There were framed photos sitting on the mantel, and I remember getting this sudden certainty, like the kind little kids get where they don't wonder if they're right, they just know. I tugged on my mom's sleeve and brought her over. I pointed at one of the photos, and I said, plain as day, "That's him. That's the man." My mom looked at the photo and froze, because the man in that picture had died not long before. A heart attack, if I remember right. The relatives we were visiting didn't understand at first. Like, what do you mean that's him? But my mom did. She immediately started telling them about how, back in our old house, I'd been talking to an older man in my room at night. The hat, the thinning hair, the way I said he wasn't my friend, the strange names for objects. And the room got quiet, because the man in the photo, let's call him Graham, was someone on that side of the family, same surname as ours. And the relatives said something that, apparently, made my mom feel cold all over. Graham used to call pens and pencils inks. Not as a joke. Not once in a while. That was just what he called them. And it matched the way I'd been talking so closely that the adults started swapping looks like they didn't want to scare themselves by saying out loud what they were thinking. The creepiest part is that he also looked like what I described. Older. Taller than some, not towering, but lean, with thinning hair, and he wore a cap all the time like it was part of him. After that, my parents tried to make sense of it in whatever way they could. The theory they landed on, at the time anyway, was that because my mom's biological family line was kind of fractured, and a lot of the men either didn't want kids, or had disappeared, or changed names, Graham might have cared about the family name continuing. And at that point in time, when my mom was pregnant but my brother wasn't born yet, I was the only boy carrying that surname. So my parents' idea was, maybe Graham showed up because he wanted to see me. Like he wanted proof the name didn't end with him. Like he wanted to pass through, take a look, and, I don't know, make peace with something. So when I think back to this older man, this man in the hat, it's hard not to wonder if it was coincidence, or if there really was someone who came by for a few weeks, spoke to a little kid in the quiet of a bedroom, taught him odd words, and then disappeared. And what gets me every time is this. My mom is the kind of person who can't keep a prank going. If she's messing with you, she cracks and laughs, always. But this? She's never laughed, never winked, never admitted anything. She's just stayed steady. And my dad, who never jokes and never spooks easily, eventually couldn't stand talking about it at all. So yeah, that's it. That's the story. And I'm telling you because I genuinely don't know what to do with it. If you've ever experienced something like this, something that feels too specific to be random, I'd really love to hear it. Because I can explain away a lot of childhood weirdness, but I still can't explain him. So, I've never really been sure how to tell these without sounding like I'm trying to scare somebody, but I swear I'm not. I just wanted to share some of the weird encounters I've had across my life. Little moments that stuck to me like burrs, even years later. The first ones I only know because my mom told me. Back when I was tiny, like still a toddler, we lived at my Aunt Marisol's house while my family was getting our place finished. One day, my mom says I came sprinting out of the hallway just bawling, pointing toward this closet at the far end like it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. And I kept saying there was a girl in there, with red juice smeared all over her mouth and cheeks, like she'd just been drinking something and made a mess. My mom checked, obviously. Nothing. No one. Just a closet. But I apparently would not calm down for a while. Which, looking back, imagine being my mom and having your toddler describe that with full confidence. I don't blame her for being freaked out. She still laughs about it now, but you can tell it bothered her. Then there's this other thing I also don't remember, but it happened often enough that my mom brought it up more than once. There's a small, old graveyard on the road toward our current house, kind of tucked back behind trees. She said when we'd drive past it, I'd sometimes wave out the window like I recognized someone standing there. Here's the part that makes my stomach flip a little. Years later, my little cousin Toby, who had never heard that story, started doing the exact same thing. Same spot, same casual little wave like, "Oh hey." My mom said she got chills so hard she almost missed the turn. Another early one was when I was a little older, maybe first grade-ish. I was in my room doing homework after dark. We lived out in the country, and back then there weren't close neighbors and there was basically no outside lighting. Like, it got dark. My desk was near a window right in the middle of my wall, and I remember getting that weird, prickly feeling like someone was watching me. So I walked out to my mom, super matter of fact, and told her I couldn't do my homework because a girl was staring at me through the window. I can still picture my mom's face. She immediately went into protective mode, checked outside, checked the yard, looked everywhere. Nobody there. No footprints, no flashlight, no car headlights, nothing. And the thing is, if someone had been out there, you would have heard them. Our yard wasn't the kind of place you could sneak around without making noise. Now, the next stuff, these are the ones I actually remember clearly because they happened when I was a teenager. And weirdly, they almost always happened when I was home alone. The first one still pops into my head at the most random times. My family had gone out to visit friends, and I stayed back. I walked from the bathroom toward my bedroom, and as I passed the hall that leads into the living room, I glanced down it without thinking, and my body just froze. Because in the hallway, facing me, there were two translucent legs. Just legs, like someone had been cut clean in half, and whatever they were just standing there. Not moving, not walking, just present. I remember details that I wish I didn't remember. The pants looked like work pants, kind of a dusty tan, and the shoes were dark, like worn-in sneakers or work shoes. I didn't even wait to process it. I basically teleported back to my bedroom, slammed the door, and sat there with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Not long after that, there was another night I was home alone while my family was, again, visiting the same friends. I was inside, minding my own business, when I heard what sounded exactly like my little brother Evan yelling outside. And my brother used to be loud on purpose, screaming, screeching, being a menace just because he could. So at first I wasn't even scared. I was annoyed, like, why is he outside doing that? So I went to the front door and opened it. Instant silence. The yard was empty. No family car, no kid, nothing. To the right of the entrance we had this huge overgrown bush. Ours was more like a thick hedge than a pretty plant, and it blocked part of the view. And from behind it, I started hearing heavy crunching footsteps moving through dead leaves, slow and deliberate, along with this clicking sound, like someone rapidly clicking their tongue. I didn't stand there and investigate. I slammed the door so hard the frame rattled and locked it with shaking hands. And the thing that messes with me the most is how the screaming stopped the exact second I opened the door. Like whatever it was, it wanted me to come outside. Like it was copying him. I don't even know if that counts as a ghost story, but it felt wrong in a way that's hard to explain. Like the air had teeth. There were a couple smaller things after that, still creepy but not as clear. One time I heard the front door handle rattling, like someone was trying to yank it open hard, and I was home alone again. I remember standing perfectly still, holding my breath, listening for anything else. And then it stopped. Another time, also home alone, I heard scratching near the attic access, like something dragging nails over wood. Not a light little mouse sound, more like someone testing the door. Eventually, my mom had enough. She did a full cleanse, burned sage through the house, said prayers, and I remember her being really serious about it, like she was drawing a line and telling whatever it was that it wasn't welcome anymore. And honestly, whether it was faith or intention or pure coincidence, things stopped after that. I haven't had anything truly weird happen in the house since. I know some of this sounds wild. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just telling you what I experienced, the way it happened, and the way it made me feel. And if you're listening to this thinking, okay, but I need details, trust me, I get it. I'm the same way. So, last Saturday was honestly one of the weirdest nights of my entire life. I'm still sat here trying to make sense of it, like my brain keeps replaying it and getting stuck on the same questions. Me and my friend Ollie are really into urbex, poking around forgotten places, old ruins, anything that's fallen off the map. We'd made this little hit list of spots around the Peak District, and we'd booked a small campsite not far from Bakewell, planning to crash out in his canvas bell tent after a night of exploring. One place we were excited about was an abandoned railway tunnel, long as anything, easily close to a kilometer, tucked away on the edge of private estate land. By the time we parked up and started walking, it had properly turned dark. No streetlights, no houses, just fields and hedgerows and that thick, rural kind of blackness where your eyes never quite adjust. Halfway across the fields, we stopped because the sky was ridiculous, like someone had thrown glitter across it. The stars were sharp, clear, bright. And while we're stood there looking up, I notice one star moving. At first I'm like, okay, satellite? But then it changes direction. Not smoothly either, more like it hesitates, then darts slightly. We keep watching and then there's another one, then another, and suddenly we're both spotting them everywhere. Like once you see one, your eyes unlock the rest of them. There were loads. I mean, genuinely too many to keep track of. They were coming from different parts of the sky, traveling in different directions, some of them speeding up, slowing down, making these odd little turns. They looked exactly like stars, white, high up, pinprick bright. Except stars don't behave like that. And we could tell it wasn't just our imagination because we saw normal stuff too. Planes way lower with the blinking lights, and even fireworks off in the distance at one point. These weren't either of those. This was something else. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've read way too much abduction and UFO stuff over the years. So while Ollie's stood there grinning like a kid, I can feel my anxiety climbing like a thermostat. Not panic, but that creeping, prickly feeling of, what if tonight's the night something happens? Ollie's like, come on, this is sick. Let's go see the tunnel. And I'm trying to match his energy, but inside I'm already half ready to run back to the car. We finally reach the entrance and step inside, and the tunnel is massive. The sound changes straight away. Our footsteps echoing, our voices sort of swallowed and thrown back at us. The air felt colder in there too, damp and old. We'd only been walking a short while when my nerves start kicking off properly. I'm thinking, this is stupid. Why are we here? What if something's down here? What if we get lost? Ollie keeps chatting and joking, totally calm, so I try to keep moving. At some point, my torch beam catches something on the ground. A rusty metal bar, maybe just over a meter long, flat at one end and jagged at the other. I pick it up and, trying to laugh it off, I'm like, right, I feel a bit safer with this in my hand. After a while, my fingers start going numb, so I lean it against the tunnel wall at a slight angle and go, we'll use it as a marker, so we know roughly how far in we are when we come back. Eventually, we reach the far end, and I'm actually buzzing, proud even, like, I did it. I pushed through the fear, nothing jumped out, no creepy whispering, No unseen footsteps behind us. Just a long, eerie walk through an old tunnel. So we turn around and start heading back. And this is the part where everything goes wrong. Then we spot the metal bar up ahead and I go, there's my marker. We walk past it, keep going, still talking. And about a minute later, we see it again. Same bar, same angle, same section of wall behind it. We both just stop. Like our bodies did it before our brains caught up. We go quiet, staring at it, then at each other, then back at it again. I remember saying something like, no, we literally just passed that. And Ollie, who'd been fearless all night, suddenly looks properly unsettled, like his face changed. He didn't even joke. He just went, yeah, we did. And I can't explain how that felt. It wasn't like, oh, we got turned around. It was like the tunnel had copied and pasted a slice of itself. Like we'd walked through a minute of tunnel, and then the minute restarted. We didn't hang around trying to test it. We just started walking faster. Neither of us wanted to see that bar a third time, because if we did, what then? What if we couldn't get out? It sounds dramatic, but it genuinely felt like the beginning of some Blair Witch kind of nightmare. That cold, sinking idea of a loop you can't break. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. Somehow we made it back to the entrance without seeing it again. We practically spilled out into the open air, both acting like we were fine, but not really speaking much. Like we didn't want to say the wrong thing and make it real. And then we still had to cross those fields back to the car, in pitch black again. On the way back, we see something that makes my stomach flip. 3 pale shapes, low to the ground, moving fast in a line right beside us. For a split second, I thought it was people. Then I thought it was deer. But no, they looked like dogs, like slim greyhound-type dogs, ghost-colored, running with purpose towards the direction of the tunnel. And the thing is, out there, in the middle of nowhere, in total darkness, what are 3 dogs doing sprinting across fields like that? No callers, no owner calling, just there and gone. We get to the car, and the relief is huge. We're trying to talk ourselves down, trying to be logical, but neither of us can really land on an explanation that fits. And then, later, when we're driving, as if the night hadn't already given us enough, we see something else in the sky. This time it's not a star. It's an orange orb, brighter, like a glowing ember hanging in the air. It stays still for a second, just hovering, and then it shoots downward so fast it leaves a trail of light behind it, like zoom, gone. We both saw it at the exact same time, and we both shouted, full-on involuntary. I've never seen anything move like that. Not a firework, not a drone, not anything I can name. And after all that, we still had to go and sleep in a tent in a field. Yeah, safe to say, I did not sleep well. Every little sound felt like it had meaning. Every rustle of wind sounded like something creeping closer. I've had strange experiences before, bits and pieces over the years, but that night topped everything. It's the combination that messes with me most. One weird thing, you can shrug it off. 2, you start raising an eyebrow. But that many bizarre moments stacked into the same night, it feels unreal in hindsight. Like a dream you can't quite hold on to. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How's your day going? Drop a comment and let me know. The weather's been pretty rough lately, hasn't it? Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Thanks for sharing your mysterious experiences with us. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Now, grab your headphones, switch on your nightlight, and let's dive into today's mysterious stories. So picture this with me. Garfield, New Jersey, mid-1980s. We were living upstairs in this old 2-family Victorian that had been built way back in 1906, creaky in all the familiar ways, the kind of house that always felt like it had a memory. By the time this happened, we were clearing out the downstairs apartment. The woman who'd lived there had been gone a while, and the place was basically a time capsule, mostly old furniture that hadn't budged in decades. My mom, my dad, let's call him Frank, my little brother Eddie, and me were all hauling stuff out, piece by piece, to the curb. At one point, Frank and I went for this massive upholstered armchair, real old school, heavy as a sin. I grabbed the front legs, he grabbed the back legs. Each leg had this wooden post with a smooth little metal button on the end, like a glide, so it wouldn't gouge the floor. The second we lifted it, Frank yelped, like yelled, and dropped his end. I thought, splinter, has to be a splinter. But he's shaking his left hand and staring at his palm like he can't even process it. He goes, "You are not going to believe this, but I just burned my hand." And I'm like, burned? From a chair? But then I see it. In the center of his palm is this angry red welt, about the size of a big coin, perfectly round, like someone pressed a hot lid against him. We set the chair down fast and started poking around. And sure enough, the metal button on the end of that one chair leg was searing. Not warm, not sunny windowsill warm. I mean, touch it and instant regret hot. Here's the part that messed with all of us. The chair clearly hadn't been moved in forever. You could see 4 deep dents in the carpet where it had been sitting, like it had belonged there. And the old lady who lived downstairs? We knew her well enough to know she wasn't scooting furniture around for fun. That chair had probably been in the same spot for 30 years, easy. So why was that one metal button scorching hot? We checked the other 3 legs, normal room temperature. We felt the carpet dents, cool. Just that single button on that single leg, like it had been heated from the inside out. Frank, being Frank, immediately went into problem-solving mode. His first theory was something like electrical induction, maybe a wire under the floor, maybe something in the wall. So we pulled the carpet back. No wiring under that spot. Then we measured the exact location and went down into the unfinished basement to see what was directly beneath it. Nothing. No junction box, no conduit, no hidden cable. The nearest main wiring was a couple meters away, clearly visible along the joists. That basement wasn't finished. There was nowhere for anything sneaky to hide. By then, the button cooled enough that we were able to drag the chair out to the curb. But of course, now we were obsessed. We tried to recreate it. We slid the carpet back into place, and we started testing the little depression like it was a science experiment. We dropped coins in it. We set a few small metal objects there. Nothing heated up. Nothing even got warm. It was like the chair leg had been the only thing that caught whatever happened. Then I got this idea and grabbed a compass. I rigged it up in this dorky way. Compass tied to a string attached so I could drag it smoothly over a board laid flat across the spot. And every single time I pulled it across that exact point, the needle jumped. Not a tiny twitch either, like a real deflection, around 20-something degrees. Didn't matter what direction I dragged it from. Same result. And then my mom, let's call her Marilyn. She's the one who made it even stranger. She takes the compass and holds it higher, around chest level, and walks slowly across the room. And the needle still reacts. She backs up, walks across again. Same thing. She goes real quiet. It's not just in the floor. It goes up. And then she says something I still can't quite explain. She could feel it, like a gentle but distinct sensation of heat rising in a narrow vertical column right from that spot, almost like standing over a vent that wasn't there. So now we're measuring like lunatics. We mark the spot downstairs, then go upstairs to our own apartment and measure the exact same location. And sure enough, right in our living room, right in front of the TV. That same compass jump. That same weird, warm column feeling if you stood there long enough. And when we checked the basement beneath that, same thing again. It wasn't random. It was like a line through the building. Basement, downstairs apartment, our place upstairs, stacked perfectly. The only reason we'd never noticed it before was because the spot upstairs was in this annoying place where nobody ever put anything. It was basically the don't block the television zone. But once we were paying attention, we realized something else. There was this faint line in our carpet that hadn't been there when it was installed years earlier. The carpet was this speckled salt and pepper kind of pattern, and we'd always assumed that line was some sort of lighting shadow from the front windows. But up close? No. The carpet fibers along that line were actually tilted, like they'd been brushed or pushed in one direction, on a clean, straight path running through that exact spot. It stretched farther one way than the other, fading out after a short distance. And here's what really got me. The compass didn't react anywhere else along that fiber line, only at the precise point, the hot button point. Like the line was a scar, but the spot was the wound. Now, the last part. The part that makes my stomach do this weird little flip even now. Because this wasn't the first time something strange happened there. Flashback a few years earlier, late 70s. I was about 11, and I was always tinkering with stuff. We had this little makeshift workshop area down in the paved section of the basement, and I'd be down there messing around with tools and parts like I was building something important. One night, I'm down there alone. It's quiet, basement quiet. And for no reason I can explain, I look up toward the darker end of the basement, and I see him. An old man, running toward me, holding a flashlight. He looked panicked, like he was rushing to warn somebody. He was wearing one of those old worker caps, the kind you'd imagine on someone from another era. It lasted maybe a second, maybe less, because as he ran forward, he just vanished. Not faded away, not turned a corner. He disappeared right in front of me, like a film cut. I remember freezing so hard I couldn't even breathe right for a moment. Then I bolted, full speed, up the basement steps. And years later, standing there with my family watching a compass needle jump and feeling heat rise from a spot in the floor, we realized something. The place where that old man appeared, where my eyes first caught him moving out of the darkness, was that same exact point, the same pinpoint in the house, the same vertical column through the building. And I'll tell you the honest truth. I don't know what it was. I still don't. We tried to explain it every logical way we could, and nothing fit cleanly. It left its mark, literally, on Frank's hand, and in my memory. Okay, so I should probably start by telling you this isn't new for me. I've dealt with sleep paralysis forever. These days, it happens maybe once a month, sometimes more if I'm stressed or traveling. And honestly, I'm usually pretty calm about it. I have my little routine. Either I force myself fully awake, or I do the opposite. Keep my eyes shut and let myself sink back under until it passes. So, a few nights ago, I checked into this hotel for a quick overnight. Nothing fancy, just one of those places that always has that extra chair by the window and a couch that looks like it's never actually been used. I did my usual thing, set my duffel down, tossed a hoodie and some clothes on the couch, lined my shoes up near the door. Automatic, like I've done it 100 times. I ran out and grabbed food, came back, and the first thing I noticed was the TV. It was on. Not loud or anything, just on. And I remember standing there in the doorway thinking, wait, did I do that? Because I swear I didn't. But you know how it is when you're traveling. You're tired, you're distracted, your brain is half unpacked. So I brushed it off. Told myself maybe housekeeping had left it on. Maybe the remote got bumped. Whatever. I showered, scrolled my phone for a while, and fell asleep pretty early, like a little after 9. And then at some point in the night, I woke up. Not fully. Not the normal kind of wake up. Sleep paralysis. I was on my side, facing the room, and the second my eyes cracked open, I saw her. A woman sitting on the couch, just sitting there like she belonged there. Her name, my brain immediately gave her a name, like it was trying to make it make sense. Marina. I don't know why. She just looked like a Marina. And listen, she wasn't slouched. She wasn't creeping around. She wasn't moving at all. She was sitting straight-backed, perfect posture, like she was posing for a portrait. She had on something pale, like an off-white dress or robe, and her hair was long and smooth, brushed so straight it almost looked unreal, like it had been ironed into place. And my heart went from sleepy to absolutely panicked in half a second. Because at first, my only thought was, someone is in my room. Like, someone broke in. Someone's sitting on my couch like it's normal. And I tried to do what I sometimes do, snap myself awake. I can usually jerk my shoulder or roll hard enough to break out of it. But the problem was, the whole scene felt wrong in a way I can't totally explain. It wasn't just fear. It was the stillness. The way she sat there so calmly, like she was waiting, like she'd already been there a while. And the worst part is how she didn't feel completely solid. She looked real, but also not. Like my eyes were seeing her, and my brain was arguing with itself about it. So I froze, and I thought, if I fight this and I wake up, she'll hear me. I know how irrational that sounds, but when you're stuck in sleep paralysis, your mind plays by its own rules. And in that moment, it felt safer to do the thing I do when I'm too afraid to force myself out of it. I closed my eyes. I basically told myself, don't look, don't move, go back under, let it pass. And eventually, I did. When I woke up again, it was early morning, after sunrise. The room looked normal, bright, boring hotel daylight coming through the curtains. For a couple seconds, I lay there thinking, okay, that was a dream. That was my brain doing its usual weird thing. But then the memory hit me, full force, like cold water. I sat up fast and did a full scan. Bathroom door, closet, behind the curtains, the whole room. Because once you're awake and it's daytime, you feel braver. You feel like, if someone's in here, I'm not stuck anymore. Then I looked at the couch. And that stupid brave feeling drained right out of me. Because the stuff I'd tossed there, my hoodie, my shirt, a couple small things, wasn't how I left it. It wasn't messy either. That's the thing. It looked rearranged. Like someone had moved everything from one end of the couch to the other, neatly, intentionally. Like they'd cleared a space for someone to sit. And I walked closer, staring at it. And I noticed something that made my stomach flip. One cushion, on the side where I'd seen Marina, sat lower than the others, like it had been pressed down. Like someone had been sitting there. Not just for a second either, long enough to leave that obvious fresh dip in the cushion. I stood there just staring at it, trying to talk myself out of what my eyes were telling me, trying to make it normal, trying to come up with any explanation that didn't make my skin crawl. But I'll be honest with you. In that moment, all I could think was, I didn't imagine everything. Okay, so before I get into the really vivid parts, I should tell you something that's kind of a running theme in my family. Weird sleep stuff isn't new for us. My mom's talked about it, my aunt has, my cousin too. And I've had my own share since I was little. Whether it's astral projection, out-of-body experiences, sleep paralysis, or something I don't have a name for. Honestly, I'm still not totally sure what category it fits into. What I do know is this: these experiences don't feel like regular dreams. In normal dreams, things shift around, the setting changes, the logic is dream logic. But these always happen where I'm actually sleeping, or at least in the exact same building. Same hallway, same room layout, same sense of this is real life, even when I'm not fully awake. And it's usually at the same times you'd expect. Late at night, early morning, sometimes during a nap. A lot of the time, it starts with that awful paralysis. But it's not the classic, can't move and see a figure in the corner. For me, it's like something grabs me. Not hands, not anything I can describe clearly, just this force. I can't see it, but I can feel it, and it's heavy and wrong. Dark, ominous, like the air itself turns thick. And then there was the Hat Man. I hate even saying it because it sounds like a spooky internet trope, but I swear I didn't read about him until after I'd already seen him more than once. Tall silhouette, wide-brimmed hat, long coat that looked like something from an old movie. And in my memories, he didn't just appear. He'd come in through the window like he belonged there, like the glass wasn't even a barrier. That part always stuck with me, the confidence of it. But the earliest thing I can clearly remember goes way back, somewhere around when I was a kid, maybe 5 or 6. It's fuzzy, like childhood memories always are, but the feeling is sharp. I woke up on the kitchen floor. Not in my bed, not even near my room, just on the cold tile, in the dark, totally disoriented, like I'd been dropped there. The house felt quiet in that deep nighttime way. No TV, no voices, no movement, just that low, empty silence. And I remember this pull to look out the kitchen window, like something was waiting for me to look. There was nothing there that I could actually see, but I felt watched so strongly it made my stomach clench. I didn't stand there long. I bolted, straight back to my room, like a scared animal, and shoved myself under the covers. Later I told my dad, and he did the dad thing, brushed it off as a nightmare. And maybe it was. I genuinely don't know. That's part of what messes with me. Even now, I can't tell you what was real. I can only tell you what it felt like. Fast forward to my early 20s. I'd moved back into that same house for a while, and I remember one night where everything snapped into that familiar terror again. I don't even remember the beginning, just the middle of it, like coming to in the worst scene possible. I was paralyzed and being dragged, not figuratively, like I could feel my body sliding, pulled from my bedroom, down the stairs, across the floor. I couldn't see what was doing it. I couldn't fight it. I was just moved. And it ended with my head right at the top of the basement stairs. That basement. Even in normal daylight, it always felt off to me. Not like haunted house dramatic, just wrong in a subtle way. And the thing is, other people have said it too. Friends, my cousin, even my partner once, casually like, yeah, there's something weird about that area. It wasn't even a creepy basement. There were windows. It wasn't some dungeon space. So it didn't feel like a basements are spooky cliche. It felt specific. The second I managed that, I woke up for real. More recently, I live in the lower unit of a duplex. Different place, different layout, and still, same kind of experiences. A few months ago, I woke up in that gray pre-dawn light when the sky is just starting to fade from black to blue. My bedroom door opens into a short hallway, and I always keep that hallway door shut. Always. But in that moment, I felt someone, something, in the main room beyond it. Not the heavy dark presence this time, more like my brain went straight into intruder. Someone's in my house. So I did what you do when adrenaline takes over. I got up, angry, shaking, ready to confront whoever was out there. I reached for the bat I keep near the bed and marched to the door like I was about to defend my life. I opened it, and sitting at my table, like she had every right to be there, was a woman dressed in white, just calmly seated, smiling at me in that dim morning light. It didn't feel like the other presences. It wasn't pressing down on my chest. It wasn't the basement feeling. It was uncanny in a different way, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse because it didn't match the situation in my head. I don't remember what I said. I just remember swinging the bat, and the moment I swung, it vanished. Not dropped, not missed. It literally disappeared out of my hands like the action didn't belong in the same reality as her. That's when shock hit me so hard I think it snapped the whole thing apart, because I woke up right after. And honestly, what freaks me out the most about that one is that I wasn't even scared of a spirit. I was scared of a real person breaking in, and the experience still slid into that impossible space anyway. And then, last night. Last night was the worst one in a while. I couldn't fall asleep for hours. You know that miserable kind of night where you keep checking the clock and every time you do it feels like you've lost a bet? I was tossing, sweating, flipping the pillow, trying everything. Eventually I must have dozed off, but the second I did, it was like I dropped straight into that same place again. Same dark presence. Like it was waiting. I was paralyzed, but instead of being dragged, I was lifted. My body rose off the bed, stiff and helpless, like I was being held up in the air. My arms were out, like a T-shape, and my head hit the ceiling with this sickening thud that I still feel when I think about it. My partner, Milo, was there in the room, trying to pull me down, trying to snap me out of it. And he was talking to me, telling me to focus on love, on good things, to push against it with something brighter. And then I saw it. On the other side of that hallway door, down near the floor, there was a shape, like a shadow that was thicker than shadow should be. And fingers, long, clawing fingers, were curling under the gap between the door and the floor, scraping and reaching like it was testing the boundary. That image is burned into me. I woke up after that, completely shaken, and I didn't even sit up. I just laid there in the dark, wide-eyed, silently trying to fill my head with anything positive, like I could build a shield out of sheer will. And eventually, somehow, I fell asleep again. Those are the ones that stand out the most. There have been others, but those are the memories that feel the sharpest. And I don't know what to do with it. Because part of me wants to explain it away. Sleep paralysis, stress, half-dream states, the brain doing weird brain things. But part of me can't ignore how consistent it is. The locations, the timing, the feeling of presence, the way it follows me even when I move. So I guess I'm telling you all this because I don't know. I want to know if anyone else has lived in this in-between space too. If there's a way to make it stop, or at least make it less terrifying. Okay, so you know those little magnetic word kits people stick on the fridge and then never actually use? Yeah, that was us. A couple years back, my ex, Evan, and I bought this tin of magnetic words, thinking we'd make goofy poems or whatever. We absolutely did not. The magnets just lived there, forever scrambled, like word confetti. No sentences, no messages, just chaos. We lived together for a while, but we split up about 4 months ago. I don't live there anymore, but I still stop by sometimes to see our dog, Miso. We're trying to keep things peaceful, you know? Friendly-ish, normal. Except, the last couple times I visited, something happened that made my stomach drop in a way I can't really explain. The first time was about a week and a half ago. We walked into the kitchen, and there, on the freezer door, were 2 magnets placed side by side, separated from the messy pile on the fridge door like they wanted to be seen. Goodbye and friend, just sitting there like a neat little sign-off, perfectly aligned, no crooked edges, no weird spacing. It looked intentional in the creepiest, calmest way, like someone took their time. Evan and I just stared at it for a second, and then we did that thing people do when something freaky happens and they don't want to admit it's freaky. We laughed. Nervously. We were like, okay, weird coincidence, and we tried to move on. But then it happened again. This time, it wasn't on the freezer. It was on the fridge door, and the words weren't side by side. They were stacked vertically, like a little poem going down the door. I left you a blessing. Again, isolated from the rest. Again, lined up so clean it looked like somebody used a ruler. And that's the part that makes my skin prickle. Because if you've ever had those magnets, you know they don't naturally end up like that. They slide, they tilt, they leave tiny gaps. This was placed. And here's what makes it worse. There basically hasn't been anyone in the house. Evan swears the only other person who's been inside recently is his coworker, Mariah, and she's not the type to pull some elaborate prank and then just never confess. Plus, there are no kids running around, no roommates, nothing like that. After the first message, Evan changed the keypad code on the front door. All the windows stay locked. There are cameras by both the front and back doors, except, and I'm not kidding, his front camera mysteriously stopped working a few days before we noticed the second message. Like it just decided to take a little vacation right when it would have been helpful. And of course, before either of us thought to take a photo, Evan got frustrated and ripped all the magnets off the fridge and threw them back in the tin. So now we don't even have proof, just the memory of it, which is somehow even more maddening. Evan is convinced I did it, like I'm messing with him. And I get why he'd think that, because, yeah, while he was out of town a couple times, I came by to feed his cat, Juniper, and check on Miso. So in his mind, I had the opportunity. But honestly, I wish I could tell him it was me, because that would mean it's not whatever this is. But I'm not taking the blame for something I didn't do. And I'm not playing games with him like that. I'm freaked out too, maybe more, because I don't even live there anymore and I still feel like it followed me out into my thoughts. And it's not like the house is totally quiet and normal otherwise. There have been little things over the years that I always brushed off. Stuff falling in the garage when no one's in there, the occasional knock at the front door, and then nothing when you check. But now I keep replaying it. And the history of the house doesn't help. Evan told me the previous owner's husband passed away there, like mid-2000s, and the woman who sold the house was really old, in her 90s. I don't even know if she's still alive now. So yeah, I've had the thought. The one you don't want to have because once you say it out loud, it feels too real. What if it's not random? What if something is still there and magnets are just the easiest way to leave a message? The weird part is, nothing else is dramatically haunted. The dog and cat don't act strange. There's no cold breath on your neck, no doors slamming on their own, none of the movie stuff. It's just the words. Just these quiet little sentences on the fridge, lined up like someone trying to be polite about it. And that almost feels worse. So I've never really known how to explain this without sounding a little out there. But I'll try, because it's been part of my life for as long as I can remember. My mom, her name's Marissa, and I have had these, not exactly ghost hunting kind of paranormal experiences, but more like this constant, quiet weirdness that follows us around. Like there's always something just under the surface that won't fully show itself, but also won't go away. The biggest thing is how we sense each other. It's hard to describe unless you've felt it, but sometimes it's like I can feel her feelings in my own body. Or I'll suddenly get this heavy, specific gut punch of worry, and I'll just know it's her having a rough moment, even if she hasn't told me anything. And then later she'll casually mention something that matches exactly what I was picking up on, and I'm left sitting there thinking, okay, how did I know that? And then there's the voice thing. Every once in a while, I'll hear her voice clear as day, like right in my ear, for just a second. Not in a spooky movie way, more like she leaned in close to say my name, and then she's gone. It's so quick I almost convince myself I imagined it. But almost every time it happens, I end up texting or calling her, and she'll answer with something like, "This is so weird, I was literally just talking about you." And she'll say it so casually, like that's a normal thing to happen, while I'm just staring at the wall getting chills. But the strangest thing we've ever had happen, hands down, was a shared dream. One night, I had this nightmare where my mom, my little brother Eli, and I were at this splash pad near a park. It was one of those summer evening scenes, the kind that should feel safe. In the dream, Mom was impatient, like we'd stayed too long and she wanted to go home. I kept whining, begging for 5 more minutes, and she was calling my name, annoyed but also distracted. She buckled Eli into his seat, and then she turned her back for just a moment to look for me again. And in that moment, this man, like he'd been waiting, slid into the driver's seat and started the car. I remember the sound of the engine turning over. I remember my mom's face changing in an instant, like her whole reality shattered. She screamed so loud it felt like it rattled my bones, and she ran after the car sobbing, yelling for Eli, banging on the window. I woke up shaking, heart racing, the kind of nightmare that sticks to your skin. I tried to shrug it off the next morning. Bad dreams happen, right? But at breakfast, Eli was quiet and cranky, and finally he blurted out, "I had a bad dream. A man took me away." Just said it like that, like it was still happening. I swear my stomach dropped straight through the floor. Mom looked at me. I looked at her. And within a couple minutes of us talking, it became obvious. All 3 of us had basically dreamed the same thing that night. Same fear. Same "a man took him" theme. Same panic. I can't even tell you how unsettling that was in the moment. But also, oddly, how it cemented this feeling I've always had, that we're connected in some way I don't understand. And it's not just dreams. A while after that, I was living a few hours away from her, and I had this anxious feeling all day that something had happened at home. Not a general anxious vibe, very specific. I kept picturing our cat Juniper outside, lost. It made no sense. I hadn't thought about Juniper getting out. There was no reason for it, and I'm not exaggerating. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was Mom, and the first thing she said was, "Don't freak out, but Juniper somehow slipped out the back door. We can't find her." I remember just sitting there staring at my phone after we hung up, like, what do you even do with that? Then there's my grandpa, Raymond, my mom's dad. He has this soft spot for both of us, and he's admitted it, which cracks me up because he tries to act tough. He says we remind him so much of his own mother, this woman named Adeline, that it's eerie. Apparently Adeline died long before I was born, long before my mom was born too. But he swears Marissa and I have her same expressions, her same tone of voice, even similar mannerisms. He and my grandma are getting older now, and keeping up with the house is harder, but Grandpa refuses to move. And the reason he gives isn't money or nostalgia. It's that he genuinely believes Adeline is still in that house. He says he hears her sometimes, sees her sometimes. Not in a scary way, more like she's checking in, like she never fully left. And here's the part that makes my arms prickle. My mom has been told before, more than once by different people, that there's an older woman spirit around her, protective, watching, and that sometimes the presence shifts toward me, like it's keeping an eye on both of us. I've felt things in my own home too. That classic feeling like someone is standing just out of view, watching you. Not threatening, just present. I'll hear weird little sounds that don't quite fit. A creak that isn't the normal settling of the house. A soft knock where there shouldn't be one. And sometimes, if it gets too much, I'll literally speak out loud, kind of gently, kind of firmly, and say, "Okay, I know you're here, but can you please stop?" And then it stops. Like I flipped a switch. There have also been nights where I wake up dead asleep because I'm sure someone called my name. Not like a dream voice, like someone right by the bed. I'll sit up, heart pounding, listening, and there's nothing. Just quiet. But I'll be honest, none of it really terrifies me. If anything, it feels familiar, almost comforting. Like whatever this is, whether it's intuition turned up to 100, or some kind of spiritual thread between us, or something I can't name, it doesn't feel evil or dark. It feels like being watched over. And still, I wonder, is any of this actually possible? Or are we just a family who's really good at pattern finding and gut feelings? I don't know. I genuinely don't. But I also can't shake the sense that there's something here, something real, that's been walking alongside us for years. Okay, so for context, I'm not exactly living in some spooky hotspot. It's a pretty normal area, but every once in a while, something happens that genuinely rattles me. Like that time I heard someone calling my name in my mom's voice when she wasn't even home, or the string of dreams I kept having that felt way too aware. This happened about 4 months ago. Back then, I barely knew anything about astral projection. I'd read just enough to feel cocky, which, looking back, is always a bad sign. And I made one massive mistake right from the start. I didn't do my usual protective routine. I didn't pause, didn't ask my guide, her name's Celine, for protection. I just went for it. I was in my bedroom, lights off, sprawled out on my bed like a starfish. And the silence in there was so thick it felt like it had weight. I started the way I'd heard you're supposed to. Slow breathing, then focusing on different parts of my body one by one. Like, okay, shoulders, relax. Hands, relax. Just trying to let everything go. Then I pictured my room in my mind, like I was standing inside it. And I imagined a rope hanging in front of me, just like those tutorials say, and I pulled myself upward. And I swear to you, it worked immediately. Like way too easily. I was standing in my room, but it wasn't my room the way I knew it. It was darker. Not just lights off, dark. Darker than that. Normally, even with the lights out, there's still street light leaking through the blinds. But now, that glow was gone. Completely. And the only light in the room was this single flashlight that hadn't been there before. Not lying on the floor. Not in a drawer, just there, like it had always belonged there. The beam was the strangest part. It was tight and unnaturally focused, aimed straight into the far corner of my room, like someone had set it up to point at something specific. Everything outside that beam wasn't shadowy, it was just black, like the rest of the room had been erased. I didn't touch the flashlight. I didn't even step closer. Something about it felt like a trap. Like if I picked it up, I'd be agreeing to something I didn't understand. So I opened my door and stepped into the hallway. The hall was brighter, but not in a comforting way. Everything had this dark blue tint, like I was seeing my house through tinted glass. It was still my hallway, but it felt filtered, distant, like the house was wearing a mask. And then this wave hit me. I have really bad arachnophobia, like the kind where a sudden spider can make my whole body go cold. And there's this specific sensation I get sometimes when I walk into a room and my brain goes, there are spiders here. Not exactly dread, but dread-shaped. That's the only way I can describe it. That same feeling crawled over me the second I left my bedroom. I tried to ignore it and kept moving. I started down the stairs, and the moment my foot touched the first step, I heard a whisper right by my ear. It sounded like an older man trying to do a baby voice, and it said, very softly, "Hi there." I froze so hard it felt like my entire soul locked up. But I didn't look behind me. I don't know why, instinct maybe. Some part of me was like, if you turn your head, it becomes real. So I just kept going down the stairs like I hadn't heard anything, like I was totally calm and normal, even though I absolutely wasn't. The living room had that same blue sheen. Nothing jumped out at me right away, so I did what I always do when I'm nervous. I went to the window. I pulled the blinds aside and looked out, and there was nothing. And that's when I remembered the basement. I had literally told myself before I started, do not go near the basement. Because even in the daytime, I hate it down there. The air feels wrong. The shadows feel too patient. But of course, my curiosity won. I told myself I'd just peek, just a quick look, just enough to confirm whether it felt different in that state. I leaned into the basement stairwell, same blackness as the window, the same impossible, heavy absence. And I didn't even hesitate. I backed away so fast it was like my spirit tripped over itself. Nope, absolutely not. Whatever that was, it was down there, and it didn't want to be observed. At that point, I should have ended it. I should have gone straight back to my body. But I'm stubborn. And I've always had this reckless streak where my curiosity overrides my self-preservation. So I thought, okay, what about outside? I went to the back door and opened it just a crack. Through the blurred glass, it still looked black out there. But the second the door opened, I could see fine. Like the outside world snapped into focus. Everything looked normal. My yard, the fence, the street. All of it was there. And then I noticed something in the road. Just barely, in the corner of my eye. A figure. Standing in the middle of the street, way too still. Like it had been paused. I tried to get a better look, and I made the dumbest possible choice. I stepped outside. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, nausea slammed into me like I'd been poisoned. My stomach lurched, and for a second I thought I was going to collapse right there. I steadied myself, looked up again, and the figure was closer. Not by much, maybe a foot, but it hadn't walked. It hadn't shifted. It was just nearer, like it had glitched forward. That was it. That was the moment panic fully took over. I ran back inside, bolted up the stairs, and practically launched myself into my bedroom. And there I was. My body, still on the bed, still sprawled out exactly how I'd left it. I climbed back onto myself like I was diving into deep water, and I started focusing hard. Hands, feet, breath, heartbeat, anything that felt physical, anything that could anchor me. And then I woke up. And I'm not being dramatic when I say my body reacted like it had been through something real. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up immediately. Not once, over and over. It was like my stomach was trying to purge something that didn't belong in me. I kept vomiting until I was shaking and my eyelids felt impossibly heavy. But I didn't want to sleep. Not that night. Not the next night either. Honestly, for days afterward, I was scared to close my eyes, because some part of me kept thinking that if I slipped under again, that thing in the road would already be waiting, and it wouldn't stop at a foot closer. So I grew up in this really old house, like it was already about a century old when I was a little kid. By the time I'm telling you this now, I'm in my mid-20s, and my younger half-brother is still in elementary school. And that house, it had a way of doing things that made you pause. There were the small, annoying, weird moments first. Cabinets would be shut tight, and then you'd hear them clack open in the middle of the night. A neat stack of plates would end up scattered across the counter, like someone had just swept an arm through them. Once, our treadmill clicked on by itself. No one nearby, no pet bumping it, nothing. Those kinds of things that you can almost laugh off, but they still leave that little cold dot between your shoulders. But the thing I can't shake, the one my family still brings up, is something I said when I was really little. I was about 3, maybe 4. My bedroom door faced this corner of the hallway, and on the ceiling there was this small glass light fixture. Nothing fancy, just one of those old, slightly cloudy glass lamps that always feels a little too dim. One night, I'm in bed, settling down, and I look at my mom and say, super calmly, like I'm asking for water, "Can you leave my door open just a little, so I can see the gray man and the quiet little boy in the hallway?" And my mom, obviously, freezes. She tries to play it cool, but she's instantly unsettled. She asks me what I mean, and I just explain it like it's a normal part of bedtime. I tell her, "The gray man hangs from the ceiling light, and the little boy walks up and down the hallway." That's the part that always gets people. Apparently, I wasn't frightened. No trembling voice, no tears, no hiding under blankets. I was just plain about it. Curious, even. Like leaving the door cracked was the only reasonable solution because, well, I didn't want to miss them. Eventually, I stopped mentioning it. I stopped seeing anything, at least that I can remember. And it turned into one of those family stories that pops up once in a while. Usually when everyone's together and someone wants to raise goosebumps on purpose. Then years passed. And later, my mom had my half-brother. Same house, same hallway. Different bedrooms, but the doors still looked out into that same stretch of hall like they always had. When he was about the same age I'd been, 3 or 4, my mom was tucking him in one night. She's doing the usual routine, smoothing the blanket, saying goodnight, turning to leave. And he glances past her into the hallway and goes, really casually, "Oh, that little boy's back." Just like that. Like he's talking about a cat wandering through. My mom's stomach drops. She asks him, "What little boy?" And he shrugs, again, not scared, not upset, not even especially interested, just certain. The boy who walks in the hallway. When she told me, I felt this weird mix of chills and something else. Not exactly fear, more like that dizzy feeling you get when 2 puzzle pieces suddenly click and you weren't expecting the picture to be real. Because here's the thing, I never told him that story. Not in a way a little kid would absorb anyway. And my mom wasn't the type to sit there and plant creepy ideas in his head. Yet he described the same kind of presence, this small boy moving up and down that same hallway. And he did it with the same calm, matter-of-fact tone I apparently had. It's strange, right? 2 kids, years apart, same house, same hallway, and the same kind of casual certainty that someone else was there. And I still wonder about it. Okay, so this is the 3rd time I've tried to tell this story, because every time I write it out, I second-guess myself and think, maybe I'm being dramatic. But I'm gonna just say it the way it's happened. About 6 years ago, my family and I moved into this house. It's not ancient or anything, just a normal place in a normal neighborhood. But almost from the beginning, I kept getting this feeling like I wasn't alone. Not in a comforting way, more like that prickly awareness you get when you feel eyes on you. There were a few times I'd glance up toward the 2nd floor and catch what looked like a dark shape, like a shadow, moving fast and then vanishing, like it ducked back out of sight the second I noticed it. I told myself it was lighting, or exhaustion, or my imagination. But it kept happening just enough to mess with me. My wife, Hannah, noticed the vibe too. So we did what we know to do. We prayed over the house. We went room to room and asked God for peace and protection. That night, I tried to settle my nerves by singing a worship song to myself. And while I'm singing, I suddenly feel this tightness in my throat, like my airway is narrowing. It wasn't like hands around my neck or anything like that. It was more like my trachea just clenched, like my body was trying to choke me from the inside. It scared me bad. Hannah and I prayed again, right there immediately, and within moments, it eased up and stopped. After that, things went quiet for a while. At least, quiet in the sense that nothing big happened. But the house always had sounds, pops, clacks, that almost footstep rhythm you hear sometimes at night. I kept chalking it up to a house settling, especially because the place was a couple decades old. And honestly, we were tired. We had little kids. Tired parents hear weird things. When our oldest, Millie, was around too, she'd do that thing toddlers do. She'd just stare at nothing. Like she'd be watching something you can't see. We laughed it off at first. Kids do that, right? Then our second, Nora, went through the same phase, and that still didn't feel like proof of anything, but it did add to the uneasy feeling, like another little pebble dropped into the pile. Then our neighbor across the street passed away, and not long after that, we started getting knocks at the front door. Not the casual tap-tap, real knocks, like someone expecting you to answer. But every time I went to check, there'd be nobody there. I blamed it on kids messing around. Ding-dong ditch. Easy explanation. I wanted an easy explanation. Another thing too, Hannah and I would sometimes feel our energy just drain out of nowhere. Like we'd be fine, then suddenly it was like someone hit a switch and we were both exhausted at the same time. Again, we joked about it. Parent life, you know? 2 little kids will do that to you. But then, this past fall, after my grandfather died, something shifted. And that's the part that's hard to explain, because my grandfather and I weren't super close, and he never even came to this house. So I'm not saying it's connected like some movie. I'm just saying the timing lines up with when everything started feeling heavier. A couple months after that, I was putting the girls down for a nap. I was sitting on the edge of their bed, leaning forward a little, and the top of my head was just an inch or two from the wall. The room was calm. The girls were drifting off, like that sweet, quiet moment where you can finally breathe. I froze. My whole body went tight. I stayed in that room for another 20 minutes, just sitting there in silence, watching and listening like an idiot, trying to make sure nothing else happened. The pain lasted maybe a minute, then faded, but the fear stayed. Eventually, when nothing else happened, I went downstairs, trying to act normal, but I was rattled. A few weeks after that, something else happened that made my skin crawl. There was this small tool attachment set, little bits, in a rubber organizer. It had been sitting in the same spot for at least a month without shifting, and one day, in the middle of the room, it just fell hard, like it got knocked with purpose. It wasn't a gentle slide. It dropped and smacked like someone flicked it off the surface. My dogs were right there, and they both startled like they'd been spooked by something they couldn't see. And I'll tell you, the hair on the back of my neck stood up so fast, it was like my body knew before my brain did. I went over, checked the surface, checked if anything was vibrating, checked if something could have slipped, and nothing made sense. The dogs did not want to be in that area after that. They kept looking toward the hallway and backing up like, nope. So I put them in our bedroom and tried to move on with my day, but I couldn't shake that feeling of being watched again. And then there was this weird thing with the girls' pedestal fan. One morning, we found the front shroud sitting down on the blades, like it had come loose and dropped into the spinning part. The motor was burnt out. When I touched the back of it, it was still warm. Way too warm. So I unplugged it immediately. What bothered me most wasn't just that it broke, it was how it broke. That shroud isn't something that just falls off. You have to twist it to unlock it. And there wasn't anything nearby that could have fallen and knocked it loose. No toys stacked up against it, no shelf above it, nothing. Since then, it's been back to the ongoing stuff. The pops and knocks. The occasional sense that something is just present. I've tried doing random video checks, even walking up to the girl's room with my phone recording like, okay, if something's happening, let me catch it. But nothing ever shows up when I'm looking for it. It's like it only happens when it wants to. And I'm trying to handle this the way I know how. I've prayed the Lord's Prayer in every room. I've spoken out loud that anything not of God is not welcome here. I'm not messing with Ouija boards or any of that. I'm not opening doors I can't close. I'm just trying to protect my family and get peace back in our home. So that's where I'm at. I don't know if I'm dealing with something spiritual, something psychological, something environmental, like wiring or vibrations or who knows. I just know this. I don't feel crazy, and I don't feel at peace. And I'm looking for a way, as a Christian, to make whatever this is leave us alone. Okay, so this happened earlier last year, late spring, like Mayish. I remember because the air had that weird in-between feeling, not quite warm, not quite cold. I was at my boyfriend at the time, Ethan's, house. He's my ex now, but anyway. It was really late, like just after midnight, and he was walking me out to my car. My car was parked on the street, right in front of his place, maybe, I don't know, 30 or 35 feet from the front door? Close enough that you could still talk without shouting, you know? So we're at the end of the driveway, and he leans in and kisses me goodnight. And then, like at the exact same time, we both notice something in the window right next to the front door. There's a light on inside the house, but it's dark outside, so it's this perfect, awful contrast. You can clearly see a figure standing there. Tall, too tall, like around 6 feet, and really thin, almost like it didn't have the right proportions for a person. At first, Ethan just kind of reacts automatically. He's like, "Dad?" Not out loud, but you can tell that's what he thinks. He even throws his hands up like, "What are you doing?" Like it's his dad silently judging him through the window or something. And then it gets weird, immediately. The figure steps sideways, behind the doorframe, so it's gone for a second. And then it starts to peek out. Slowly, like just the edge of a head appearing from behind the door. Then it snaps back out of sight. Then peeks out again. Then snaps back again. Over and over, like it's playing this sick little game. And I swear to you, the moment it started doing that, my entire body just froze. I got this horrible, crawling chill that shot straight down my spine. Not like, oh, that's creepy, but like, my body was reacting before my brain could even catch up. Pure danger, pure terror. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I didn't even think to grab my phone, which is insane because I'm the type of person who'd normally be like, record it, record it. But my mind was completely blank except for this feeling of, do not go closer. It did the peeking thing for maybe 20 seconds? Half a minute? It felt longer, but I think that's just fear messing with time. Then it slid out of view again, behind the doorframe, and it stayed gone. And for a moment, it's just me and Ethan standing there in the driveway, staring at the window like idiots, whispering stuff like, "What the hell was that?" Because what else do you even say? It's out of sight for maybe another 30 seconds. Then it comes back. But this time, it's lower, like it's crouched down, or on its knees. And this is the part that I can't shake. I can still see it when I close my eyes, because it starts thrashing its head from side to side, violently. Not like a person shaking their head, no. Like something jerking and snapping in this frantic, unnatural way, like it's trying to distort itself on purpose, like it's performing. And the feeling that hit me in that moment, God, I don't even know how to describe it. It was the most dreadful feeling I've ever had. Like the air got heavier, like something was pressing on my chest. And I knew that it was watching us. It knew we could see it, and it wanted us to understand that. Like it was saying, without words, yes, I'm here, and yes, I see you seeing me. And then, it didn't step away. It didn't move behind the door again. It just vanished, like it simply wasn't there anymore. We each grabbed a kitchen knife. Ridiculous, I know, but we were terrified and trying to feel less helpless. And we checked the whole place. Nothing. No open door, no hiding spot, no sign anyone had been there. And his parents were asleep in their room. We could literally hear his stepdad snoring through the wall. Like deep, dead-to-the-world snoring. And standing there in that quiet house, with everything totally normal, it almost made it worse, because it meant there wasn't an explanation that made sense. That house had always felt a little off, like there were other weird moments before that night. Little things, but nothing even close to what I saw in that window. I honestly don't know what it was. I'm not going to sit here and claim I have some perfect answer, but I know what I felt, and I know what I saw. And whatever it was, it didn't feel like a person. It felt like something else entirely, something real and aware, and absolutely not meant to be there. Hey, so something kind of unsettling happened last night, and I honestly just need to say it out loud to someone who isn't already in my living room. I had my longtime best friend over. I'll call her Mara. We've been close since, like, 6th grade. The kind of friendship where you basically grew up in each other's houses, you know? Like her parents' place was as familiar to me as my own. Where she grew up is important too. Our hometown sat on land that used to be a native settlement, and across from Mara's childhood house there was this preserved area, protected acres with a little museum and a welcome center, plus an old historical structure tied to a specific tribe from the region. Even as kids, it felt different over there. Quiet but not peaceful, more like watched. And honestly, the land her neighborhood sat on had to have been part of that same sacred space before it got divided up and sold off. So last night we're hanging out, just a cozy, low-key night in, when we start reminiscing about all the creepy stuff that used to happen in her house. And it reminded me of this one incident that her sister, I'll call her Nina, used to bring up all the time. Mara's old bedroom was upstairs, and it had a window that looked down toward Nina's room on the ground floor. Nina had a sliding glass door that opened to the backyard. One night, Mara and I were being little idiots, hanging out in her room, leaning out the window, sneaking a few hits like we were so rebellious. We had music playing quietly, and we were literally just vibing, singing along to some playlist, totally in our own world. And then Nina comes storming up the stairs like a tornado, full sprint, screaming, furious. So Mara and I freeze with that instant guilt, like, welp, we're caught. But Nina wasn't yelling because we were smoking. She was yelling because she thought we were messing with her. She was shaking, like actually terrified, and she's like, "Why would you do that?" And we're both like, "Do what?" Apparently, while we'd been upstairs the whole time, Nina heard knocking on her sliding glass door, like someone outside. She called out to us, no answer. Then she heard something, not just knock, but pound on the door from the inside, like right behind her. And then she heard what she described as this awful, sharp scream, and then this quick running sound, like something sprinted away down the hallway. She thought it was us trying to scare her, but we hadn't moved. And the worst part is, once she said it out loud, all three of us just kind of knew. Like there wasn't a normal explanation that fit. We all ended up in the same room for the rest of the night with the lights on, just wide-eyed and freaked out, jumping at every little noise. So we're talking about that last night, laughing a little in that we're laughing because otherwise we'll cry way. And I realize there's something I've never told Mara. Something I've carried around for years because I convinced myself it had to be a dream. I'm like, okay, I've never said this out loud, and I hate even bringing it up. And she immediately goes, "What? Tell me." So I tell her about this night, one of those sleepover nights where we'd fallen asleep on the couch after playing video games. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, groggy and half frozen in that weird sleep paralysis feeling, and I looked out through this big bay window that faced the yard, and I saw a figure moving outside. Not fast, not like a person walking with purpose, more like shuffling. I remember sitting up just enough to peek over the back of the couch, trying to make myself look asleep. Like I didn't want whatever it was to know I was watching, and she was wearing these dark, tattered clothes that looked heavy and wet, like they'd been dragged through mud. I'm telling Mara all of this, and I notice she's gone completely still, like her whole face changes, and she goes, really quietly, "What did it look like?" And I'm already getting chills because I can hear my own voice shaking when I say, "It looked like like a crone, like a swamp hag." And Mara just gasps, like full hand over mouth, eyes filling instantly. And she says, "I saw it too." And I swear to you, my stomach dropped like an elevator. She tells me she'd been awake that same night. She remembers it clearly, and she saw the same figure cross the yard and come right up to the window. And then she says something that honestly made me feel even more sick. She'd waited all these years for me to say it first, because she didn't want to influence my memory. She needed to know she wasn't making it up. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there realizing I'd done the exact same thing. Locked it away, labeled it dream, and never touched it again because it felt too ridiculous to be real, but also too vivid to be fake. My partner was in the room hearing all of this, just looking back and forth between us like, "What do you mean you both saw the same thing and never talked about it?" The air felt heavy, like the whole room got colder. I could feel my eyes burning, and Mara looked like she was about to cry too, and it wasn't even dramatic. It was just that awful feeling of being a kid again, suddenly small and unsafe. It's been, over a decade, and neither of us has said a word about it until last night. And I want to be clear, I'm not someone who dismisses the paranormal outright. I'm open to weird stuff. But this was almost too on the nose, like a literal cartoon villain. Like if someone dressed up as the creepiest possible version of an old witch just to mess with two kids. Except, who would do that? And why? And how would they know we were there? This was way before people were doing elaborate gotcha videos or viral pranks. And there were barely any people who could have even been suspects. And the memory itself isn't fuzzy. That's what messes with me. It's sharp. It's detailed. It wasn't a blink and it's gone moment. I remember the figure stopping right in front of the window, just standing there, like it was looking in, looking at us. And I remember squeezing my eyes shut so hard it hurt and thinking, if I don't look, it's not real. If I don't look, it can't see me. I didn't open my eyes again until morning. So yeah, that's what happened. Two grown adults sitting on a couch, realizing we shared the same nightmare, except we were both awake. And I just keep thinking, if it was nothing, why does it still feel like something? Hey, Thanks for sitting with me for a minute. I'm going to tell you something I usually keep tucked away, because it's hard to explain without sounding like I'm exaggerating. But I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm just tired of carrying it alone. When I was a kid, I used to sneak around with my friends, Nico, Lena, and I, doing that whole urban exploration thing. Old warehouses, abandoned workshops, places that still smelled like rust and wet concrete. We told ourselves it was just curiosity, bravery even. But there was one place we avoided for a long time. Not even a factory, more like a forgotten house on the edge of an industrial lot. Windows dark, yard overgrown, the kind of building that makes you feel watched before you even step inside. We used to joke about it to act tough, but the truth is, my stomach would drop every time we walked near it. One afternoon, we finally went in. And I know how this sounds, I really do, but the air felt wrong. Like the house had an attitude. Like it didn't want us there. We kept whispering, even though there was no reason to. I remember Nico laughing too loud, forcing it, and Lena squeezing my sleeve like she was trying to anchor herself to something real. Maybe it was just the idea of homeless people being inside. Maybe it was the shadows. Maybe it was our imaginations. But when we left, it didn't feel like we left alone. A few days later, things started happening at home. Small things at first. That feeling you get when you're in your room and you swear someone is standing just outside the door. A coldness in the hallway that didn't match the rest of the house. The kind of silence that feels deliberate. And then the dreams started. In those dreams, there was a presence. I can't even call it a person. It wore a mask, sometimes plain, sometimes like it was stitched together from different faces, and it wasn't alone. It was like it had others with it, like a pack. They didn't just scare me. They played with me, chasing me, cornering me, letting me think I'd escaped, and then, no, there it was again. I became terrified of the dark in a way I couldn't admit out loud. I wanted to ask my parents for a nightlight, but I was quiet back then. The kind of kid who swallows everything. And I already had grief sitting in my chest because my grandpa had died, and it felt like the world had cracked open and never sealed again. Every birthday after that, I'd get this dread. Like the date itself was haunted. Like something tall and dark was waiting for me to blow out candles so it could step closer. Then my parents split up. And it wasn't a clean, gentle split. There was shouting, fear, things a kid shouldn't have to carry. I don't want to turn this into a list of tragedies, but that time, it shaped me. It taught me to keep my mouth shut and watch people's moods like weather. When I got a little older, 13, 14, I finally started making friends again. I thought maybe I was coming back to myself. And then I got betrayed. Not in a we drifted apart way, in a sharp, humiliating way that made rage bloom in my throat. Like someone looked at my trust and decided it was something to use. I remember thinking, so this is what life is going to be, just sadness with different names. That's around when I had the dream with the message. I was standing outside, and it was raining so hard it looked like the world was trying to erase itself. And on this wall, like someone had written it just for me, were the words, "Your best friend will protect you." I didn't understand it. I didn't even have my best friend anymore. Not really. I'd lost them, emotionally, like they'd been ripped out of my life and replaced by an empty space, because I tried to ignore my dreams for years. I really did. I told myself they were just nightmares, just my brain processing trauma, just stress. But then my dreams began to feel like glimpses, like they were showing me pieces of things before they happened. And I hate saying that because people hear it and they think, lottery numbers. Believe me, if my dreams could help me win money, I'd be thrilled. But my dreams didn't guide me to cash. They guided me to funerals, to sickness, to loss, to those phone calls that turn your bones to water. I'd see something, a detail, a feeling, an image, and then months later it would happen, and I'd just sit there thinking, I knew, and I couldn't stop it. Who do you even tell about that without being laughed at? So I went quiet again, and the dreams got worse. Not just personal, bigger. Wars, outbreaks, crowds panicking, the world turning harsh and metallic. One dream stayed with me like a stain. I saw Ukraine, soldiers, bodies, a tunnel that felt infamous even inside the dream, like everyone knew it. I saw burning wheat, like the earth itself was on fire, and people trapped. Hundreds of souls pressed into dark stone, unable to get out. And there were 3 figures nearby. Not dead, not exactly alive. They were lying on their backs at first, faces hidden, like mannequins with weight. Then one turned toward me, finally, and smiled like it was trying to calm a frightened animal. It held my hand, and on my palm was a black mark. I still don't know what that mark meant, but the way that figure looked at me, gentle, almost familiar, made it worse in a different way, because it suggested there was meaning, a plan, a connection I didn't ask for. Later, I saw that smiling figure again, and this is the part that still makes my stomach twist. I had a friend, let's call him Elias, someone I trusted for years. We were long-distance friends, close in that intense way you can be when messages become your safe place. He told me he was sick. He told me things were getting worse. And then one day, I got the message. He was dead. I broke. I mean, really broke. I cried until my face hurt, begging his family to let me come to the funeral, and they refused. I felt locked out of grief, like I didn't even have the right to mourn him properly. And in a dream, I ended up in this bright place, so bright it almost hummed, and there was that smiling figure again, watching me cry like it could see every thought I tried to hide. It felt like it was telling me, "You're not supposed to follow him. Not yet." It showed me scenes from my life, like flipping through pages I hadn't written on purpose, and warned me not to do something stupid, like there would be consequences, like punishment. And it said I had to wait for my moment, when the truth would be revealed. I woke up thinking, okay, that was my brain trying to keep me alive. But a few days later, I found out Elias wasn't dead. He was alive. He had faked it. And I can't even explain how that kind of betrayal feels. It's not just anger. It's like your reality cracks, and you start questioning every memory you ever loved. After that, the dreams turned into chases again. Sometimes the masked thing came back, maybe the same presence from childhood, maybe something my fear gave a face to. Sometimes it used people, like it could wear them like costumes. I'd be running through houses that didn't make sense, trapped in rooms with no exits, and then, always, the impossible door would appear. And behind it, I would see me. A younger version of me, but shadowed, twisted, screaming like the pain had no end. Like my childhood was still locked somewhere, suffering in a loop. And then I'd wake up gasping, sweating, furious at my own brain. There was a period where I started hearing voices too. 2 of them. A woman and a child. It happened for 2 nights. It was so strange because it felt like one ear heard it clearly and the other ear heard nothing, like the sound existed in a sideways way. At first I told myself it was my mom and my little sister moving around at night. Sometimes they'd be awake between 2 and 5 in the morning. But on the second night, I couldn't stand it anymore, so I opened the door. No one. The moment I opened it, the voices stopped. And later, when we were out buying bread, someone casually mentioned our neighbor had died about a week earlier. A week earlier. The same day I'd first heard the voices. I'm not telling you this because I want you to think I'm special. Honestly, I don't feel special. I feel exhausted. I'm naturally kind, I think. Soft, poetic in my head, full of imagination. But I'm also emotionally fragile. Like I bruise too easily, even when I'm trying to be strong. I know people could call me delusional. I get it. Sometimes I call myself that, just to try and keep control of the story. But the truth is, I don't understand why I dream like this. I don't understand why someone in my dreams seems to chase me, while another presence, smiling, calm, shows up like a guard or a guide when things are unbearable. I just want it to stop. Because these dreams don't just scare me, they make me sad. They turn me into someone who only expects the worst, like every sunrise is just a countdown to the next tragedy. And I hate living like that. I tried getting help. I went to clinics and tried to explain, and a lot of the time I felt dismissed, like they saw me as a wallet, not a person. I left crying more than once, feeling embarrassed for even asking. And there's another layer to it that's hard to admit. I have these dreams where I'm other people. Not like a fun movie scene, like I'm inside them. Different voices, different ways of thinking, different lives. Sometimes I'd wake up feeling like I'd been temporarily borrowed by someone else's story. And the weirdest part is, in many of those dreams, the other life ends in death. I've been a cruel, educated man who warned me to be careful. I've been someone in New York decades ago, happy, reckless, then dying in a way I can't even pin down, like the dream itself didn't want to show me the exact final moment. I've been a poor man with nothing, collapsing into loneliness like a slow fade. I've been a woman who fought without fear. And once, this still makes my throat tighten, I dreamed about a woman who died in prison. I searched what I could, and she actually existed. I don't even know how to explain that without sounding ridiculous. But in the dream, I could feel her pain like it was mine, like it had soaked into my bones. Like someone had hurt her, and she never escaped it. Sometimes just thinking about it makes me cry. The only person I really told all of this to was my mom. I spilled everything, every nightmare, every strange detail, and she listened. She told me my grandpa had been a soldier, someone who survived things he shouldn't have survived. She said he had a kind of luck, or something like fate on his side, and after the war he ended up in a church. Like he needed somewhere quiet to put what he'd seen. And yeah, talking about it does help. Even now, telling you, it helps a little. I have other dreams I could share, but the ones I'm telling you are the ones that left bruises. I don't want a dark future. I don't want to foresee anything. People think knowing is power, but sometimes knowing is torture. It's like watching the sun for the last time. Warm, bright, full of hope. Even if your family isn't perfect, even if they've hurt you, you still love them. You still want them to be safe. And you're trapped between loving them and carrying a secret that would only scare them. So I wait. Not because I'm brave, because I'm not a hero. I'm not trying to save the world. I'm just trying to survive being me. People have told me I'm like yin and yang, light and dark fighting in one body. And honestly, that's what it feels like. A gentle part of me keeps trying to hold hope, while the dream part keeps whispering disaster. But I made myself a promise after being mocked and dismissed. I'm going to keep hope anyway. Even if I've been betrayed, even if my dreams show me death, even if some days it feels like something unseen is trying to push me down, I want to fight back. I want to save someone, somehow. I don't even know who yet. I just feel it like a stubborn ember. And there's this last dream I keep circling back to, like the end of a book I haven't read yet. In it, I'm on the other side of something, and I forget everything. My family, my pain, my name. Not in a tragic way, more like it's required. Like I'm being prepared for a job I don't understand yet. I've also dreamed of a life that felt medieval. Armor, oaths, loyalty, rebellion. I was serving someone powerful, and then I turned against him with a group of soldiers. We fought, we died, and in the dream, even the king's betrayal felt personal, like he hurt me because he'd once trusted me. And what's strange is, those 3 figures from the war dream? In that dream, they also wore armor. As if we were connected across different stories, different timelines, different nightmares. I don't know what any of this means. I just know I'm tired. And I want, more than anything, to see myself again in a dream, not as a victim, not as a stranger, not as someone doomed, just me. So I could give myself a hug, the kind I needed when I was a kid walking into dark hallways, pretending I wasn't scared. And honestly, there's this game, Celeste. If you've played it, you'll understand. It makes me cry because it feels like someone finally put words around the fight inside me. The climb, the falling, the choosing to keep going anyway. So, yeah, that's my story. Thank you for listening, truly. And I hope, with all my heart, you never have to carry dreams like mine. So, this happened on a Thursday night, right at 10:07 p.m., and I was completely alone out at our little farmhouse in the country. My roommate Mara was in town grabbing food with a friend, and I was in my room doing something so normal it almost feels ridiculous now. Watching Glee and recording my reaction to a big scene, because I'm dramatic and I thought it was funny. Our room setup matters, so let me paint it for you. My bedroom has this weird slanted corner, and along that slant there's a wall with 2 small open-door cutouts, like short storage closets, not a normal hang-your-clothes closet. The doors are maybe 5 feet tall, and they're always kind of just open. The TV stand sits right between those 2 closet openings, so when you're watching TV, you're basically staring directly into the closet residences. Like, it's in your line of sight the whole time. Anyway, I'm recording the TV, and then I flip the camera around to my face to catch my reaction. And the second the camera hits my face, like the exact second, I hear this tiny little knock. Barely anything. Almost like someone testing the wall. And then 5 loud knocks hit right after it. Not house settling. Not a soft bump. Not from the hallway. Not downstairs. These were human-sounding, clear, deliberate knocks. Like knock, 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 knock. Coming from inside the closet wall. Like someone was right there on the other side and used their knuckles. I just froze. My stomach dropped so fast it made me feel nauseous. I stopped recording immediately and sat there listening, trying to convince myself I imagined it, except I knew I didn't. My first thought was, someone's in the house. So I call Mara, and I'm whispering like the person can hear me through the walls. She's trying to calm me down, and she goes, maybe it's coming from downstairs, like pipes or something, or the basement? But I'm telling her, no, this was in my room, in the closet wall. It sounded like it was right beside me. There's this pause, and then she says, very carefully, okay, if you're really scared, we have that pistol locked away. I'll tell you exactly where it is. Grab it and check the house. So I did. My hands were shaking so badly I kept dropping things. I grabbed it, and I went through the whole place like I was in a horror movie trying not to breathe too loud. I checked every room, under beds, behind doors, both closets, the bathroom, the basement. I even went outside and scanned the driveway and the tree line, looking for headlights or, I don't know, movement, anything. Nothing. Not a single sound. Not a car, not footsteps, not even the sense that someone had just been there. Just quiet country night. I went back upstairs and, this is embarrassing, but I pushed a dresser in front of my bedroom door and piled a couple storage bins behind it, like that would stop anything. I sat on my bed with all the lights on, just staring at those closet openings like they were staring back. And I kept replaying it in my head. That first tiny knock, and then those 5 loud ones. Because here's the part that messes with me. When I watch the video back, you can hear it, clear as day. And you can also see exactly when it starts, the moment I flipped the camera toward my face. Like, it waited for me to do that. We even wondered if one of our dogs could have done it, like scratching or thumping a paw against the wall. But the dogs had been asleep, and the knocks actually startled them. They popped up and stayed weird and alert for the rest of the night, like they didn't like the vibe either. And the hollow-sounding part of that wall isn't even in a place a dog could have reached in a way that would make that sound. And it's not pipes. It's not wood expanding. It's not an animal in the attic. I know people say those things, and I get why. But this wasn't random creaking. It was patterned. It was intentional. And here's the thing. This wasn't our first weird moment in that house. We've been there for years, renting from Mara's dad. And I've lived there on and off because of school. But more recently, I moved back full-time. And for the first time, it's just been the 2 of us living there. Over the years, there have been these little things. Quiet knocking sometimes. Lights that we swear we turned off, suddenly on. Cupboards left open. Doors not shut the way we both remember shutting them. Especially because we have cats, and we're always trying to keep them out of certain rooms. And normally we just brush it off. Like, oh, I must have forgotten. Because honestly, that's the easiest explanation. And it happens so rarely that you can't prove anything. But lately, it's been feeling more frequent. And the creepiest part is that we've both had our own, "Did you see that?" moments. But never in the same room at the same time. This time, I had something solid. The video, the sound, the timing. And I don't even know what I believe. I'm not sitting here like, it's a ghost, case closed. I just know that 2 women living out on a farm can only write off so many weird little things before it starts to feel like, okay, something is going on here, whether it's explainable or not. And if it is something paranormal, whatever that even means, it doesn't feel violent. It doesn't feel like a heavy, evil presence. It feels more like something trying to get attention, or letting us know it's there. But still, 5 knocks on the closet wall at night, right when the camera flips to my face, that's the kind of thing that makes you sleep with the lights on. So, I grew up in this tiny, tucked-away town with a long, stubborn history. The kind of place that feels like it got left behind on purpose. If you picture somewhere out in the general direction of old gold rush country, just not too specific, you've got the vibe. The house we lived in was ancient by kid standards, like well over a century old. It had creaky floors, weird little cold pockets in the hallway, and that quiet, someone built this a long time ago and never really left feeling. You know what I mean? And when I was little, maybe 6 or 7, I started telling my mom about something I called the man with no face in our living room. I can still see him when I think about it. He wasn't transparent or wispy like in movies. He was solid looking, just completely black. Not like wearing black clothes, like made of black. And even though I could sort of make out where the eyes and nose should be, it was all smudged and swallowed up in shadow, like a silhouette cut from midnight. A vague suggestion of features, but nothing you could actually recognize. No expression, no eyes you could meet, just this presence shaped like a person. And the worst part? I saw him a lot. Not once, not in a one weird night kind of way. I'd spot him in the living room every few days, sometimes more. Just there, standing in a corner or near the doorway like he belonged. At first, I did what kids do. I complained. I begged my mom not to make me go in there alone. I'd do anything to avoid walking through that room. But families have routines, right? You still have to pass the couch to get to the kitchen. You still have to grab your backpack. Life keeps moving even when something is wrong. As I got older, the sightings didn't really stop, but I stopped talking about them. When I was about 14, I started having brutal sleep problems. I'd go days feeling half awake, like my body forgot how to shut down properly. And once that happened, my family started assuming what I was seeing had something to do with exhaustion, hallucinations, stress, a brain running on fumes. And honestly, that explanation gave everyone else comfort. It gave me something too, at first, but not enough. Because even on nights when I did sleep, when I felt clear-headed, I'd still catch him there sometimes. And after a while, I got so tired of wondering if I was crazy that I just made him a secret. I'd rush past the living room. I'd keep my eyes forward like if I didn't look, he couldn't be real. If I needed something from that room, I'd practically jog in and out like the floor was lava. I learned how to live around him, which is such a strange thing to say out loud. I hated him. I was terrified of him. And yet I also got used to the idea that this faceless shadow was simply part of my house. Then, years later, almost a decade after the first time I saw him, my family moved. New place, new walls, new smell, new light coming through the windows. And just like that, he was gone. No tapering off, no final sighting, just a clean cut. I never saw the faceless man again. I tried not to think about it. I really did. It's easier to pack up scary childhood memories and label them weird phase than to poke at them and wonder what they mean. But then one night, years later, I was hanging out with a childhood friend. Let's call her Marin. And we were tipsy in that loose, honest way people get when they've had a little too much and they suddenly feel brave. And Marin goes quiet for a second, then tells me she has something she's never said out loud because it still freaks her out. What I didn't remember was any explanation. That night, with her voice low and her eyes fixed on the table like she didn't want to see my reaction, she finally told me what happened. She said I'd left the room for a minute, maybe to grab a snack or go to the bathroom, and she'd wandered into the hallway by herself. She was walking forward, but her head was turned because she was looking back toward my dog, who'd been trailing behind her, just casually watching him like you do when you're a kid in a friend's house. And then she stepped into the living room, still looking backward, and when she finally turned her head forward, she said she was standing directly in front of someone, a man-shaped figure, close enough that her stomach dropped instantly. And he didn't have a face. She told me she froze so hard she felt like her bones locked up, like her brain short-circuited between run and this can't be happening. She panicked and squeezed her eyes shut, just for a second, like maybe if she reopened them, it would be gone, like a bad trick of the light. And when she opened her eyes again, the room was empty. Just the living room, the furniture, the dull old light. Nothing else. She said she stumbled out of there and spent the rest of the night feeling sick, like her body was trying to process something it didn't have instructions for. When she finished telling me, she laughed once, this nervous, shaky little laugh that didn't match her face at all, and asked if I thought she'd imagined it. And that's when I felt my own blood go cold, because as far as I could remember, I had never told Marin about the faceless man. Not once. I was too embarrassed. Too scared she'd look at me differently. Too scared someone would say the words out loud. You're making it up. So I told her, finally, what I used to see as a kid, how often, how I avoided that room like it was cursed, how it stopped the moment we moved. And as I was talking, I watched her face drain of color in real time. Her eyes got wide, and she just kept nodding slowly, like each sentence confirmed something she'd spent years trying to convince herself wasn't real. We sat there in silence for a while after that. Now, I know people talk about shadow figures like they're a common thing. I've read the explanations: sleep issues, stress, weird lighting, your brain filling in blanks. And I'm not here to argue with logic, honestly. I want there to be a neat explanation. But I also can't unknow what it felt like to live with that presence in my childhood home. And I can't ignore the part where someone else, someone I never told, walked into that same room and saw the same thing. So I guess that's why I'm telling you. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Anything you couldn't quite explain, but it stuck with you anyway, because it felt real in your body, not just in your head. I've carried this one quietly for a long time, almost 8 years now, and I've only ever told my mom. Even saying it out loud still gives me that weird mix of tenderness and confusion, like I'm holding something that doesn't fit neatly into normal, but also doesn't feel like it was nothing. So, my grandmother, her name was Marlene, was 94 when she got sick. It started as pneumonia, and it got bad fast. She ended up in the ICU, and they intubated her. My family really struggled with the idea that this might be the end. Everyone was clinging to hope with both hands. But me, I don't know how to explain it without sounding cold, because it wasn't cold. It was more like this deep, steady knowing in my gut. This is probably her time. And because of that, I flew in from far away to see her before the ventilator happened. Like I needed to look at her face and tell my heart, "You were here. You showed up." Here's the thing, though. Marlene was stubborn in the best way. She actually rallied. She came off the ventilator and was breathing on her own for about a week, maybe a little longer. We all got whiplash from the relief. Like, see? She's tough. She's beating it. But then she got hit with a secondary infection. And just like that, she was back on the ventilator again. About a month after my visit, I was home in my own bed, living my normal life again on the outside, even though, inside, I felt like part of me was still hovering in that hospital room. And then one night, really early morning, like 3:47 a.m., I jolted awake with this horrible sensation that I can still feel if I think about it too long. It was like my breathing wasn't mine. Like air was being pushed into me and pulled out of me in a rhythm I couldn't control. Steady, mechanical, almost too perfect. I remember lying there half panicked, half frozen, thinking, what is happening to me? It wasn't exactly pain. It was more like my body was being used as a bellows. In and out. In and out. And it went on long enough that I started counting, like counting would somehow make it stop. And then, just as suddenly, something else happened. My mind started flipping through memories, fast. Not like how you normally remember things. This was different. It was like a rapid-fire reel being shown to me, crisp and vivid, almost too sharp. Like a flip book you can't slow down. I saw Marlene's hands, so specific I could have described the tiny spots on them. I saw us making pastries together, the flour on the counter, her laughing when I made a mess. But then the images got even stranger. Not dramatic things, just objects, random little details I hadn't thought about in years. A bright stained glass lamp that sat in a corner, a heavy strand of costume pearls she loved, the carved knobs on her old dresser that always felt cool under my fingers, a tin box she kept photos in, the one that smelled faintly like perfume and paper. It wasn't just nostalgia, it felt delivered, like someone was placing these things in front of me one after another, saying, "Here, remember this, and this, and this too." And then, without warning, everything softened. My breathing went back to normal. The panic drained out of me like water leaving a sink. And this calm moved in. Not sleepy calm, not "I'm fine" calm. Something clearer than that. A calm that felt like truth. And in that calm, I just knew. I knew Marlene had died. I didn't check my phone. I didn't talk myself into it. It wasn't a guess. It was like I'd been told, but without words. And I remember just sitting there, holding the phone, feeling this strange, steady quiet inside me. And I said, "I know." Then I told her what happened. The breathing, the memories, the sudden certainty. And my mom got quiet too. Not shocked quiet, more like recognizing quiet. She told me something I'd never heard before. Apparently, this kind of thing has happened in our family. She said Marlene once told her that when her mother died, she saw something, like she could sense her leaving, like the moment wasn't contained inside the hospital room. And that should have made me feel better, right? Like it was explained. But honestly, it just made it bigger. Because the next day, something happened again. Something that I can't dress up to sound normal. I was walking around my house, doing small, ordinary things, and I felt a presence nearby. Not scary, not heavy, almost playful. And in my mind, I saw it as this warm, golden orb, like sunlight gathered into a little sphere. I didn't see it with my eyes the way you see a lamp. I sensed it, like you sense someone standing behind you before you turn around. And I knew, in the same simple way, that it was her. But here's what really gets me. The energy didn't feel like the Marlene I knew at 94. It felt young, light and curious, like she'd shrugged off something heavy. Like she was, 25 again. Like she was free. Later that day, I went out to run errands, and she felt like she was with me, like she was kind of enjoying it. I could feel this bright attention, like she was looking at what I was looking at, like she was amused by the ordinary stuff, like she was zipping around, not trapped in a body, not tired, just delighted. I know how absurd that sounds. I do. But it felt so real that I wasn't even embarrassed inside my own head. I just felt happy for her. Like, oh, you're okay. You're more than okay. And then I had this sense, gentle, not sad, that she wouldn't stay long. Like she was stopping by, letting me feel it, and then moving on to whatever came next. And that's exactly what happened. After that day, I never sensed her again. I've had a couple dreams over the years, but those felt like my own mind pulling out old photographs. Comforting, but different. Those dreams felt like me. That golden light felt like her. So that's the story. And I still don't know what it was. Was it grief doing something strange to my body at 3:47 in the morning? Was it my nervous system firing off in the dark? Was it coincidence wrapped in meaning because I loved her? Or was it something real, some kind of shared moment, a life review that brushed up against me because we were close? I don't know. I just know what it felt like. Like love reached across a distance, and for a few minutes, I got to be there when she let go.